It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is here. Richard Campbell, too. Actually, Paul's not here. He's in Berlin getting ready for Epha, the big CES of Europe. He's got some new PCs from Epha, including a new Dell and a surprisingly inexpensive Lenovo gaming laptop. We'll talk about the Windows recall button that doesn't actually do anything. And trouble ahead for Intel. Oh, yeah. Maybe NVIDIA, too. All that coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 897, recorded Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Not the worst currywurst. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft, and we have some news today. Paul is in Berlin for Epha. Hello, Paul Thurrott.
Hello, Leo.
Say, what does Epha stand for?
I don't know. Actually, so it's German for Consumer Electronics Show.
Oh, okay. That's perfect.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah, like Farfanugan.
I'm not going to try to say that.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
International Farfanugan Day.
And weirdly, Richard Campbell is home in Madeira Park, British Columbia. Hi, Richard.
I got home just in time to get all the tomatoes. The garden is going very well.
Oh. Wait a minute. Isn't tomato season over?
It's ending, yeah. So we got back.
British Columbia has a 7-day growing season. You got to cut them a little slack here.
Yeah, gotta get. But did I make BLTs last night for dinner? Ooh, dang right,
there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Oh,
lettuce from the garden, tomatoes from the garden, a big bowl of sourdough from the local bakery. Yeah, it's all goodness.
Oh, well, now that I've been completely distracted, I guess we could talk about electronics.
Pig knuckles and currywurst?
Yeah. Currywurst. Did you have your currywurst, Paul?
I've had at least 3 currywursts. I've had a pig knuckle. I've had a schnitzel.
Oh.
I've been Germaning it up.
Germaning it up. I love it. Well, good. All right. I'm just going to bow out here because I have half the screen and you guys only get a quarter each.
It's okay.
But at least we know when you're here, you're really here. You know?
I'm really present when
You really are.
A lot of you there.
We're just playing with different layouts, so to speak. I don't know.
I appreciate the Mexico shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, I thought because I'm going on vacation to Canada, I should wear something appropriate.
Sure. It was kind of a NAFTA themed shirt.
Wearing the warm shirt isn't going to save you. It doesn't work that way.
We start in Manhattan. We're going tomorrow. We're flying to Manhattan. We're going to do a photo walk and meet up in Bryant Park on a rainy Saturday afternoon in Manhattan, 3 to 5 p.m. for the meetup.
So let me ask you a question. Are you flying into Newark?
No, I saw your Instagram. But Newark is a nightmare, huh?
I've only heard about this nightmare, but now I've experienced it. And Newark was already the first circle of hell. I don't know what's happening there, but
we're JetBlueing it to JFK, as one does. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have that meetup at Bryant Park, photo walk 5 p.m. with Joe from our club. Nice. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm bringing my good cameras. We're going to take some pictures of Grand Central Station. We're going to do the golden hour. And end in the Oculus. I can't wait. I'm going to really look forward.
It should be great.
Joe's an accomplished street photographer. Spends all his time in Manhattan, so he really knows the area. And then Lisa and I are going to hang out in New York for a little bit and get on a boat on Monday and sail to Canada.
Huh.
As one does.
That seems like a roundabout way to get to Canada.
It's it's the weirdest ways. It's the weirdest.
It's like 3 hours to the north by car.
You could just drive there.
Yeah.
The first port is Newport, and then Boston,
Rhode Island. Yep.
Newport, Rhode Island, Boston. We're going up the coast of New England, Portland, Maine.
Yep. Skip right into New Hampshire like everyone else. Yep.
Yep. Skip right by it, and then we're going to St. John's.
Nice.
Yep. Newfoundland. Yep.
Halifax.
Lovely.
And Quebec City and Montreal.
You're going up
one of my favorite cities.
What is that? Is that St. Lawrence Seaway?
St. Lawrence Seaway. Yeah. St. Lawrence. Yeah. Beautiful.
It will complete my collection, Seaways of the World.
And if you continue on past Montreal, you could make it all the way to Ottawa, where the late great Queen Elizabeth II once said on our very first visit, now as the young queen, well, you never have to worry about invading this place because they'll never find it.
Which is slightly better than, I wish they would rebel.
Wow.
Ottawa's
Okay.
kind of tucked away, You're,
Yeah.
you're on these big waterways and all busy, and then you sort of hang this corner going up the hull. And
Look, it's Ottawa.
and there's Ottawa.
Yeah, I kind of wish we were going on. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah, you can get all the way to Chicago if you try hard.
We're going to do the Mississippi next year, and I thought
That's
that
awesome.
would really be an interesting trip.
Is
We're
that
going-
like the central square in your waterways bingo card?
Yeah, exactly. I am getting them all. We're going from New Orleans to, and I didn't realize this, to the Twin Cities, but it goes all the way up there.
You can.
You know that Mississippi River is only the second longest river in North America.
Mm.
What is the longest in North America?
It's the Missouri.
I did not know that.
I know, I didn't either. This is a trivia question. I failed at.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to make a note of that for cruise
It's
time.
gonna it's gonna come
trivia.
up. You're like, this is pretty good, but it's no Missouri. Am I right? You're gonna be that guy.
I think we passed the Missouri on the left,
do.
but
Yeah.
okay. Let's talk about Epha, Paul,
Yeah.
and you can join in too, Richard.
Yeah, please.
The big well, you said Consumer Electronics Show, but I think it's actually one of the oldest trade shows in the world. It used to be a radio trade show,
Yeah,
right?
and now that CeBIT has bit the dust, it's kind of the big thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So I've never been. I've been to Berlin twice before this trip, but never to Epha. And this is I've had this conversation with a bunch of people here. This is a curiously big year for the PC.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, from a hardware perspective, silicon especially, this might be the biggest year in the history of the PC. Not because they're going to sell more than ever before, or whatever, but it's the sheer amount of stuff happening this year is rather impressive.
Yeah. The question is how much of it's really relevant. Like, I think
Yeah.
getting ARM on Windows, serious like, is important, but nobody's talking about that. It's all the distraction that it is AI.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before, but I feel very strongly that this whole AI PC, Copilot Plus PC thing will recede in the same manner as multimedia PC, media center PC.
Yeah,
tablet
eventually it's just PC.
It's just PC. Yeah,
You used to have to buy a sound blaster for your PC.
that's right.
Then one day you didn't.
The first day I tried to add a CD-ROM to my computer, I cut my fingers so many times trying to get into all the little pins and everything.
yeah.
I actually started crying. I was like, I can't. This is not.
I'm not doing
This is not fun. You know.
34 pin 2 rows are not for you.
What's funny is I was going to say that's a lot easier now, but actually it is a lot easier now because we don't have CD-ROM drives anymore.
No,
they're just gone.
That's
They
a great.
fixed it.
Yeah, the best part is no part. So
Yeah. I don't cut myself on the internet.
But for a
that much.
period, there was the SATA plug, and it's really hard to cut yourself on a SATA plug.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
One of the little ironies of the show notes today is Epha actually has not begun. In fact,
Nice.
Epha doesn't begin until Friday. And the funny thing is, a lot of the people who are here right now covering all of the big events and news of the show are leaving before that show begins.
Nice. So they're there for the embargo stuff. They've got their stories in order. They've snagged some interviews. They don't have to stay.
Intel, Qualcomm, AMD, and all of the major PC makers have events that occur before Epha starts. So you could run the rack, get on a plane, and fly home and be fine.
Nice. Is that your intent, friend? Or are you sticking
No,
around
I'm
for
going to
the
stay for the weekend, but my wife came, so we're going to actually go see Berlin. I'm not going to the show.
Nice.
Oh, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
Berlin's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm trying to do something every day, but we love it here. I love Berlin. So Epha's not started, but the Epha announcements have started, right? Starting with some answers to some questions that we've had. Remember
For months.
when Microsoft launched Copilot Plus PC back in May, that brand was a little bit of a surprise.
Yes. And they did it
requires
so
a certain-
elegantly as well.
It was really well done. Microsoft
all the vendors
marketing.
were really happy. as I
Yeah,
recall.
top notch. They didn't make anyone upset. It went great. And, now we're riding that wave. It's wonderful. And what a world that would be.
The problem is we're both terribly sarcastic. One of us should be trying.
Both of us
to
could
play
just
the
riff
straight
on
guy.
this for 15 minutes straight, imagining
hours.
a fantasy world in
The
which
fantasy
Microsoft
world where nobody
got that
got
right.
walked out of the meeting or any of those things.
Yeah. One thing that's going to come up multiple times in this episode is I've talked to people at different PC makers, silicon makers, And I have more information along those lines. I can verify that that's exactly what happened. When we talked about that, the Intel guys were like, no, we're coming. I'm like, no, you're not. And ugliness happened. So there's that. But yeah, so when that did happen, regardless of the controversies of the day, what we walked out of with was Qualcomm launched their Snapdragon X processors. All the major PC makers were on hand with 1 to 4 models, not a lot compared to Intel and not even AMD, but, pretty good showing. We've since seen that those laptops are pretty damn good, as far as efficiency, especially. Small issues with gameplay, really small. No one really noticed. So that was good. And then Recall was recalled and...
Well, it never made it into the box, right?
Yeah, so it's coming eventually.
You've botched an announcement.
When the primary component of that announcement is canceled at the last second. So that happened. And then, by the time those PCs launched in June, we kind of understood where we were at, but we had questions because we knew AMD was coming up with Zen 5. We knew Intel was coming up with Lunar Lake and Arrow Lake, and that those things would have processors with embedded NPUs that would make the Copilot Plus PC spec. We didn't know whether they would be branded as Copilot Plus PCs. We didn't know if they would just be AI PCs that had support for Copilot Plus PC features. No, we didn't know, basically.
Yeah, think they'd just expand the brand. It's like, if you care about this brand, then it's like, how many people can we get under the umbrella as long as you went and defined a threshold. A bunch of us own machines that already clear that threshold.
Well, one of the theories, though, was Qualcomm obviously got a little bone from Microsoft that they would
they should.
Exclusive access to this brand for a little while, at least. And there was some evidence that was going to be exclusive to them forever because PC makers especially, you think someone would have slipped up, but they kept referring to their devices as AI PCs, which was kind of the old term, right? And anyway, as of last night, Microsoft said, nope, these things will be marketed as Copilot Plus PCs, or at least they can be. Wow. They will have that full range of features that Qualcomm now has exclusive access to and eventually recall.
But starting when?
Yeah, so so there's still a little bit of a question. So tied into this is this whole Windows 11 24H2 thing, right? And so
it's definitely been part of the problem.
Yeah, so there was this kind of limited release of it with the Qualcomm PCs back in June. I've had this tip about how anyone, you could do it right now. You could go get it if you wanted it on an Intel or AMD based PC, no problem. But basically not available. And we knew it's going to be the feature update second half of the year, typically October. It's a Microsoft release, so it's staggered. Sometimes it's a preview release in October and a broad release in November, and it's not really super broad until December, but, we'll see. We still don't have the answer on that. But Microsoft, as part of their announcement that, yes, these new AMD and Intel-based PCs would be in that family of computers or family of brands or whatever, said they will get an update that gives them those features, suggesting that they will not ship with them initially. Yeah. So,
but if it was packaged in 24H2, that makes perfect sense because you can't really, per se.
Well,
you'll pull the update.
Right. So as we record this, it's early September. Yeah. It's likely that Microsoft has just or will soon sort of finalize what becomes that initial release of 24H2 for x64 hardware. So that suggests that at least some of these computers, based on when they ship, because the announcements we've seen so far...
No, I'll bet they'll be on it. It'll just be feature flagged.
Yeah, right. So yes, that's my guess too, is that they will actually ship with 24H2.
Yep.
And that there will be a cumulative update in November that pops that out too.
Yeah, which is just flipping some switches, turning that on.
Yeah.
And literally, meaning digitally, like it's just a software thing.
Hopefully.
But that November makes it 6 months, right? Then launch in May.
Yeah,
6 months late. Like that sounds like a deal.
It's a clean 6 months.
I give you 6 months of you get this brand, and then we got to get on with it.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about 24H2 later on, but I wrote a quick article about what's kind of new there, and it's not a lot, right? So there's the stuff that, if we forget about the Copilot Plus PC features, which will be exclusive to the newest chipsets, right, from all the silicon makers, it's mostly minor stuff, but there have been a few feature updates that have occurred since the, I'm going to call it June, initial release of 24H2, right? The that will be part of whatever these guys give out later in the year. So it's a moving target. I mean, that's part of the problem. There's no.
I would also, it occurs to me that where Build fell on the third week of May, Ignite falls on the third week of November.
Interesting. Coincidental.
It's odd.
It's
very
a coincidence.
odd.
Weird. That's weird to me that you even brought that up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could, right. So it would make sense for Microsoft to want to announce that at their own show.
In Chicago.
Yeah, right. So yes. So we know Zen 5's out, desktop and laptop, and now Intel has formally launched Lunar Lake. We don't have any. Well, we have one. Dell has gone live with at least one Lunar Lake-based PC that's available for pre-order now. But as far as Lenovo and HP, not yet. So sometime in the next 24 or 48 hours, I'm sure we'll hear from those guys. And I think you could expect a lot of Lunar Lake, some AMD Zen 5, and then, a smattering, a little sprinkling of the Qualcomm stuff. Although we're going to get to that in a second too, because there was a new announcement there as well. So so Lunar Lake is a thing. AMD, like I said, Zen 5 already a thing. And then Qualcomm, we'll get to that. So here's what I've heard. And I'm not usually the type, this is like a Mary Jo thing. Like Mary Jo, you'd run into someone, at an event like this. And I'd be like, hey, what's going on? How are your kids? And she's like, tell me something that's going on inside the company right now. She's like really, she's very kind of
straight at it. Yeah.
But, I've been out for a little while, and I haven't traveled for work a lot, especially not internationally, and haven't seen some of these people in a long time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on my Mary Jo hat here, and I'm going to find out what's going on here. So I had some really interesting conversations that verified a lot of the things that I'd heard about before. And we've discussed this notion that Intel, especially, one of the things that is not obvious from the outside and sounds borderline illegal to me, but has been going on for decades and decades, is that Intel pays big, big money to PC makers to make sure that they adopt their chips. And more importantly, skip other people's chips,
that's where the illegal part would come in, right? Like,
I
mean, Intel basically made Intel-based Ultrabooks come true, right? They kicked a lot of money to a lot of those builders to do sock design, RAM soldered on, and chassis thin enough to julienne potatoes, and it worked. Like, without a doubt, it worked. Most machines are still made. Like, one would argue that's a weird little buy-in. I think it was like $450 million. Like, it wasn't a trivial thing, but it worked.
This is the rare example of Intel kind of doing the right thing when it comes to mobility and efficiency over the past 10, 15 years, because that was something that Microsoft has always been hammering on with them. PC makers, honestly, I don't think they care as much.
No.
And they kind of see themselves as competing with each other. They don't see themselves as competing with Apple. They're obviously concerned with margins. I mean, their margins are very low. So every dollar counts. And I think the reason that Ultrabooks took off as a spec is because Intel made it happen.
And I think the PC makers genuinely believe the customers wouldn't buy them because they were more expensive.
Yeah, which is so wrong-headed.
They were racing for the $500 laptop.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, no, we want you to make this Ultrabook. Well,
this is
$1,200.
Yeah, this is an important part of the history. PC makers embrace netbooks to such a degree that they forever gouged their own price structure and ruined their own businesses. And they tried to do it again. People forget this, but when Windows 8.1 came out, there was a 15 seconds where 8-inch Windows tablets were going to be a thing.
Right.
My God,
Windows license.
They all jumped on this thing immediately because, and this made Microsoft insane. It was like, guys, you got to stop going, circling the bottom here. You got to shoot a little higher. So the PC market is in much better. Well, actually, that's not true. The quality of PCs is much higher today than it was at that time. So that stuff has actually improved. But man, it's just kicking and screaming, right? So since then, obviously a lot has changed, but so just a couple of high level things I'll say. Qualcomm came out and said this publicly, so this is not private information, but Qualcomm said, look, we help subsidize things and we do that kind of thing too. We found in the PC market that we had to dramatically raise the prices we were paying to make that happen. So part of the success of the Qualcomm launch back in June or May was that they were like, okay, we're going to double the amount we're paying you guys. And PC makers woke up and said, sure. Right. So the type of, it's slightly irritating to me that there aren't a lot of,
though, right?
It is messed up.
Because that price just gets passed on in the chips to the vendors, which gets passed on to the customer.
Well, but the force we're not discussing, the thing no one will really say on record is the other half of this discussion is Intel on the other side saying, well, we'll give you a little extra not to do it. How does that sound? How much they give you?
Therein lies that this is where the FTC should show up.
Yep. So that stuff happens. This is what's going on in the background. But the funny thing is the two people told me, this is so beautiful. I always had this image of AMD kind of haplessly wandering through life, not really caring, like just kind of saying like, look, we feel that we make the best chips and we're not going to do any of that stuff. We don't care. And they were like, yeah, that's exactly what they do. They just don't even try like that. Like we're
not going to play that game.
Somewhat, this was an exaggeration, I think, to make a point, but somebody told me that the amount of money that Intel pays PC makers every year is more money than AMD makes in a year, right. Which is not literally true, but it's they were trying to put in perspective, like how different these companies are.
Yeah.
Intel, we're going to get into this later in the show, is having some problems. I don't know if you've been watching the news lately. No. So it's possible that inroads could be made by AMD and Qualcomm simply because Intel's focus may be elsewhere, just saving the business. So we'll get to that. But it was fascinating to me to have these conversations with people. I've always had these types of conversations in a way, but it's been so long. I haven't been to this kind of an industry event in a long time because of COVID and all that. And I very early on, in fact, I will say that in this case it was Lenovo. Back when all the PC makers were making 16:9 screens. I didn't understand why we couldn't go taller, that this aspect ratio made sense for multimedia, but it wasn't for movies. It wasn't great for productivity. And these two guys from Lenovo at the time, ThinkPad guys, were like, yeah, no, you're 100% right. It drives us insane. But even them, the biggest PC maker in the world, could not dictate to the display makers to ship panels that were any other aspect ratio. It was too much demand. And it took a long time, but today, of course, we see 16:10 is the new standard. So it finally happened. But that's the type of kind of conversation I would have kind of on the back end with people from these companies. And so it's been kind of fun getting into that a little bit this week. So that's
getting down in with those guys and just what they're worried about. It's interesting. Just, they see the market differently.
Yeah. Yep. And I keep mentioning this, but Steven Sinofsky's book, he talks about this kind of thing a lot. He talks about his frustrations with and Microsoft's frustrations over time with Intel, with the PC makers, how they would just squabble amongst themselves, didn't want to spend money, didn't want to get anything done, always needed prodding to go down any direction. It's just, it's partners that they have the same customers, and they have completely different goals, and it's hard. It's like wrangling
interesting
cats.
That you would think in that array of PC vendors that somebody would say, well, we're going to be the premium product.
Yep.
And I think they've all of those attempts failed.
Yeah.
And many of the vendors, like if you look at a Lenovo line and you look at a Dell line, there is a low cost product and there is a premium product. Like they just try and make the range, but none of them necessarily present themselves as the premium company.
That's true. Right. Because
there's a lot of PCs bought by people who do not care about that. I guess
PC makers are like Samsung is in phones. They have a wide range, a big portfolio, and the big volume is on the low end. The high ones are higher margin, but they sell fewer of them. And overall, they do however they do. Mac and iPhone line up the same way, of course, right? Same company, but it's pretty much just premium.
Yeah, Apple only makes it premium. It's like, why does this work for Apple and it doesn't work for anybody else?
Yeah, this is the one case where I think monoculture makes sense. That's probably why.
You have to control all the variables in that sense. Yeah, on the IT side of this, I've always appreciated that the Dells and the HPs and so forth have made a line of products meant for sysadmin. So drivers are tightly controlled, changes are very restricted, because it's like, I need to, over a period of 2 years, buy the same machine in multiple tranches.
So I'm going to forget the details on this, but Dell, probably Latitude D series, they would go 8-10 years to ensure that every little module that plugged in, every whatever peripheral, that these things would be compatible for a long, long time. And that's how you get into business, right? That's the guarantee those guys want.
And part of that was that on the software side, those admins were not modernizing with how they did images and things. Like imaging got, back in the Ghost days, that was very necessary. And that technology evolved and got way better, but the practices didn't.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. It's frustrating.
I stare at this all the time, Paul, and I try and figure out what part's the dog and what part's the tail, right? Like, who's wagging who here?
Yep. Right? So, okay. Blah, 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 whatever. All right. So again, like I said, Epha, whatever, has not started, but Dell announced Lunar Lake versions of this XPS 13, which is now this ultralight 2.67 pound mini laptop. There's a version running Qualcomm Snapdragon, which came back in June, and there's actually still a version running Meteor Lake. So you have kind of that interesting choice there. There's no AMD version, but you can pre-order that now. I think the prices start at $13.99. Full HD plus display.
Isn't Lunar Lake with the same processor in that HP you like?
No. So Lunar Lake's
not.
No.
Oh, that's the newest. Okay. You have Meteor Lake in yours.
Meteor Lake. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So Meteor Lake is the first gen Core Ultra. Lunar Lake is the second gen. Big improvements in graphics processing and big improvements in the NPU, and then it's a new architecture too, right? And so,
do we know how it compares to the Snapdragon 8?
Yeah, actually, so I'm glad you brought this up, because actually, in my notes I meant to discuss what you just asked. So we don't have a lot of reviews or any reviews of these systems to compare yet. And interestingly, there are going to be multiple examples of PCs that will actually ship the same exact computer with the 3 different chipsets. So we're actually going to be able to make a pretty good
awesome
Apple to Apple comparison. Yeah, that's never happened, right? Yeah. So that's very interesting. And also for people like AMD, there's a lot more AMD happening than ever before. It's still, a minority percentage compared to Intel, but there are a lot of examples across multiple PC makers where you're going to get a Zen 5 choice and a Lunar Lake choice, and it's going to be the same hardware otherwise. The motherboard's different, of course, inside, but as far as, the ports, screens, whatever, that stuff's going to all be the same. So there's going to be some good head-to-head. So the way I'm going to frame this is, because this is just from talking to people, right, behind the scenes. No one's brought up a benchmark or, they've just told me what they've seen. The discussion that I've had about Snapdragon X and comparing it to the Mac and Apple Silicon, right, is, look, ideally, this thing would have no fans. It would be silent. It would be exactly the same. It would have 15 hours of battery life. But we need to be realistic here, right? First gen. And the term I use is you kind of want it to be in the ballpark, right? Mm-hmm. So all day battery life, if it's 10 hours versus 15, it's still all day battery life, right?
Yeah.
If it has a fan, but it never comes on, basically, it's close enough. It's in the ballpark, right? That's and I know it sounds like I'm rationalizing a little bit there, but that was the way I kind of approached it. And I will say, for whatever it's worth, like that's kind of where Snapdragon X landed. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, if you think about Zen 5 and Lunar Lake, and you compare it now to Snapdragon, because they already have the compatibility. That's just, Intel had an event, I think it was on, I guess it would have been Tuesday night, where they basically just crapped on Qualcomm for 2 hours. Right. And it was 100% about compatibility. And it was almost like a comedy sketch. It was like, hey, have we mentioned how terrible Qualcomm is? No, let's talk about it again. It was like, oh, here's a video game. This is something you can't do on Qualcomm. That kind of thing. It was a little brutal.
Yeah, but why are you so insecure?
Well, because suddenly Qualcomm is there, right? Intel has ignored Qualcomm until about 10 seconds ago, because they just, look, I mean, and
because they sold millions of machines in the past 6 months, I don't think they did.
No, but they're fine. So, Intel's gotten the religion when it comes to efficiency, battery life, all that kind of stuff.
That's what they came to the gate with, right? That's the whole chipset mentality.
Yeah, I mean, Qualcomm is making them look bad, just from that perspective.
Right.
AMD, by the way, is too, as it turns out. I mean, they're actually doing a really good job. So the high level commentary that I heard, and this was repeated a couple of times, was basically what I just said about Snapdragon compared to Qualcomm, to Apple Silicon. From an efficiency standpoint, battery life, just basic power management capabilities, Lunar Lake and AMD are in the ballpark.
Right.
They're not as good.
No.
AMD is better. Battery life, especially if we'll just accept a round number of 10 hours of battery life on Qualcomm, AMD is going to land around around 8.
Right. Which is still a work day.
Yeah. And Lunar Lake, 6.5, those are not exact numbers, and they're not numbers. I'm just as a rough percentage, just kind of put them on a scale, and we'll see with exact PCs how those things land. The MPUs are there. That stuff almost doesn't matter, but whatever. They're, those capabilities are good, but they exceed Qualcomm in certain areas, right? Not just compatibility, but the integrated graphics on these chips are unbelievable. We've talked about that previous gen AMD with a 760 or 780M graphics. Those are great. Well, now they have 800M graphics, and they're already doing their hybrid architecture stuff on the processing cores. I mean, that stuff's going to be fantastic. So the overall picture there is actually very good. And it is that thing I was talking, they're in the ballpark. They have a really good performance, graphics performance, and then compatibility story. They're x64, it's native. And now they're getting much better on efficiency. So have they caught up 100%? No, but it's much better than it was. That's what I've heard. So this is not based on me seeing anything. This is based on me talking to people, but that's what I've heard.
And as long as they're in the ballpark, you'll go with the chip, right? I mean, that's what they're counting on.
I think, and I've already seen people talking like this. This is businesses talk this way, of course, but also just individuals. Like, there's a lot of distrust of the unknown. Yeah. And there's just certain things that freak people out. And I am right now using a Lenovo ThinkPad, Qualcomm based, whatever.
Yeah. We've already established that you have an abnormal relationship with PC hardware. Most people buy a PC once every 2 to 5 years, maybe less.
Yeah, I switch PCs every 2 to 5 weeks.
These are very painful purchases. Yeah. Right? They're typically over $1,000. Like this is like buying a household appliance. It is rare and it's concerning.
I need these people to man up because there's good stuff happening. And look, I giggle like Curly from the Three Stooges every time I open the lid on one of these laptops, and it just comes on. It's like magic. Like it's, I'll tell you something. This is a fact. When I go, I'll be gone for 7 days, right? When I get home, I have these laptops. There's some on my dresser in my bedroom, right? I'll open up like the EliteBook 1040. Nothing's going to happen. I can guarantee. Nothing will happen. There are some Snapdragon. I could open those things up. Nothing will happen, and I'll hit the power button, and it will come up pretty quick because it's whatever. It's sort
gone
smart hibernation, whatever it's called. But that MacBook Air, I guarantee you, 100%, it's going to pop right on the second I open it.
It's like you hadn't even gone away.
We need to figure that out, and the battery will not have disappeared over that week at all. Right. It's incredible. It's magic, So that stuff's real. I mean, you gotta. It's like trying to convince a person who can fix a carburetor in a car that electric cars are a thing. It's like, but I can't fix it. Yeah, you're not going to have to fix it. That's the point. It takes some time.
Yeah.
Anywho, I hope that Lunar or Intel and AMD catch up, and based on what
competition is good. Yeah.
I want everyone to have these benefits, and then if you're too much of a Nancy boy to handle Qualcomm, then you'll have options. It's good. So the Dell thing happened. So Qualcomm also announced a new chip at the show, and this one's a little surprising because it's not a better chip; it's a worse chip.
No.
Yeah, so it's an 8-core Snapdragon X Plus, which is the lowest end. So now there's a new low end. It has less cache. Less, the clock speed's lower. The big thing, though, I think the thing that's actually the big difference is the GPU is significantly slower from a clock speed perspective. It's the only processor in that range that has a different GPU or a different GPU clock. This might be taking binning to an extreme. This
is we get into the yield. Like we got 30% of these that don't make these numbers, but if we cut it down to this.
Yep. And from the way Qualcomm presents this publicly is like, this is what PC makers have always been asking for. It's the reason we already had 3 or 4 or 5 SKUs and now we have 6 or whatever. They want these price points and they can hit the different price points for different products. And maybe, yes, I'm sure that's part of it, but I actually do think I really think it's about yield, and it's fine. This came up, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, but I openly wondered at one point, when are we going to start hearing about Snapdragon X-based Chromebooks, right? Like this chipset would be huge for Chromebooks. They run Android apps. Android phones are switching whatever the next phone chip from Qualcomm is based on these chips. It's not an 8CX Gen 6 or something. It's this thing. So that seems like a natural to me. And I would say also these lower end Snapdragon processors probably would make more sense in a Chromebook. Right?
And there's no chance that they just made a lower end processor, and kept every other component the same.
Yeah. Yes. Obviously, right? Obviously.
Yeah. Like if you're trying to make a lower cost product, why wouldn't you go down on the Wi-Fi chipset, down on the Bluetooth? You didn't, because it's the same freaking chip.
That's right. It is the same freaking chip. Actually, it's literally the same chip.
Yep.
Yep. So look, I don't know if we're ever going to hear the inside story in this one, but yeah, anyway, they're doing this. Obviously, there will be next gen Snapdragon whatevers, and whether that gets announced at their October event in about a month and a half or not, I have no idea. If it happens next year, and we can't say. I don't know. But as of now, we have this thing. So, what man would want you now? I don't know, but I don't know.
You can't say that.
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, and there was some good news though at the Qualcomm announcement. So Google Drive, my one hang up, the one thing that doesn't work,
you were upset about,
it is coming natively to ARM. So there's going to be a Windows and ARM client for Google Drive, and that's not there today, but it's sometime in the next month or two. And ExpressVPN,
it will happen.
Yeah. ExpressVPN and NordVPN also are now live natively on ARM, and that's huge because VPNs are also one of those apps you can't emulate apparently. Like,
and they're showstoppers. Yeah.
Yep. So those are two pretty big kind of.
You won't buy it if you can't have your VPN. A VPN you can't fake your way around because it's too low level. Yeah. So it has to work.
Yeah. So they got that going. And look, by the way, is this Qualcomm going to these companies and saying how much this is going to take to make this happen? Yeah, probably. But you know what? Yeah. That's how this stuff happens. It's fine. Like I
remember back in the WinPhone days. Microsoft literally was hiring friends of mine to write the Uber app for WinPhone.
Or here's the top 10 apps on iOS. Could you write an app or a game that looks like that?
Yeah.
No, there was a lot of that.
Go to the company and say, hey, we want you to make a WinPhone version. Like, we haven't got the resources. Like, here's the resource. They're going to do it. And then they'd make the version, hand it to them, and they'd never touch it again.
Yeah. That happened a lot, actually.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
I get it. You're trying to make a market.
Yep.
Can we just interrupt? I just want to interrupt here for a moment to do an ad, but I want to hear about the latest on your Aero Electronics.
I just got this email before we started recording.
Don't say anything.
I've heard about this.
I want to know. I want to know.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot more, not just from Epha, but in general. You're listening to Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is in Berlin. That's why he sounds German. That, or maybe the excess consumption of currywurst.
It's all the currywurst.
It's great to have you, Paul, and Richard Campbell at home in Madeira Park, British Columbia. Our show today brought to you by Flashpoint. For security leaders, 2024 has been a year like no other. Is that underselling it? Cyber threats continue to increase breaches. Now there's geopolitical instability, adding a whole new layer of risk and uncertainty. And if you're a security boss, if you're a leader in an enterprise, you need to know. You need the kind of information. Frankly, you need an intelligence service to keep you up on what's going on, just like any government would. Let's talk numbers. Last year, mind-boggling, a staggering 84% rise in ransomware attacks. That's almost double. 34% jump in data breaches, and of course, resulting in trillions of dollars on financial losses and threats to safety worldwide. So I've got your intelligence agency for you, Flashpoint. Flashpoint empowers organizations to make those mission critical decisions that will keep your people and assets safe. How? By combining cutting edge technology with the expertise of world-class analyst teams. You've got a team working for you. And with Ignite, which is Flashpoint's award-winning threat intelligence platform, you get access to critical data, finished intelligence, alerts, analytics. It's all in one place. Maximize your security investments. By the way, some Flashpoint customers avoid $500 million in fraud loss annually, and they report a 482% ROI in 6 months. I can't name names, but you got to think, if you're a big multinational, you need information. You need your own intelligence service. You need Flashpoint. Flashpoint earned a Frost & Sullivan 2024 Global Product Leadership Award for unrivaled threat data and intelligence. The senior vice president of cyber operations at a large U.S. financial institution, which shall remain nameless, said, quote, Flashpoint saves us over $80 million in fraud losses every year. Their proactive approach and sharp insights are crucial in keeping our financial institutions secure. They're not just a solution, they are a strategic partner, helping us stay ahead of cyber threats. It's no wonder Flashpoint is trusted by both mission-critical businesses and governments worldwide. To access the industry's best threat data and intelligence, visit flashpoint.io today. I don't know how you'd do business without it, honestly, in this crazy environment. Flashpoint.io. We thank him so much for supporting Windows Weekly and making a truly amazing product. We really appreciate the support. Now, I want to know, Richard Campbell, tell me about your exciting new developer kit, Snapdragon Elite, that's coming to your door any day now.
I don't know about any day.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
there are days in 2025.
it's true. There's true.
So I'm looking at my order. It says September 18th, 19th.
Yeah. I haven't actually even looked at the order. I got this email this morning, and it's from the Aero Electronics folks, and what they say is, "Hey, thanks for your order. It will be shipping later in September." They don't give you a date.
Did it say a year?
Yeah, no.
Is it the Nedry character from Jurassic Park going,
But then it says Qualcomm Technologies would also like to inform you about an important update to your product.
Uh-oh.
Ready for the important update?
Yeah.
Yep,
I will read it
Snapdragon X.
verbatim from Qualcomm Technologies. Your device will now ship with a USB-C to HDMI dongle in lieu of an embedded HDMI port. We look forward to seeing what incredible apps and experiences developers produce utilizing this device.
I don't want no dongle. Give me my money back.
Is there a sadder sound than sad trombone? Like, what's the next step up from that?
No, there's nothing
That's
sadder.
about as sad as it gets.
Oh.
So let's be clear. At this point, if they're actually shipping later September, there is an HDMI port on the device. It just doesn't work.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Right, like that's what's happened is in testing. Now it could be something as simple as an FCC violation. It has too much.
I would
radio
love
feedback.
if the port was there, but it was like the
They didn't get approval.
It'll
Maybe
be
they didn't
capped
get
over.
approval.
I'll bet you be capped over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got maybe it's an emission breach. Like, and this is all speculation on me, but having been involved in building hardware, let me tell you, you've laid out the board, you've started producing the units, and you can't get it past FCC.
Yeah, I bet you that's it. That
Right?
makes
And
perfect sense.
So you just
awesome.
turn it off.
Yeah, we want to ship it to you. We want you to have it.
The last
So
time a
literally, then
computer
a guy
maker had
goes
this
in there with a
problem-
little grinder and he cuts the traces to disable that.
Well,
thing.
they could just throw a shield on it or something like.
Well, I'm sure they tried. I'm sure they were battling that. But considering how late this is in the process, that you hit a point where it's like, we need to redesign the board, and they're like, we don't have time. There's no time.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Look, I've been there. Like, I've literally been at that point where we could ship in one country, we couldn't ship in another because different qualification rules.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It hurts, and it's like, if we'd figured this out 6 months ago, we would have designed the board differently. Like, you missed it in the prototype.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway,
Okay. Good to know.
and later in September,
Yeah, well, I'll be back later in September as well. Yeah.
you might have an exciting gift when you get home.
It'll be on my doorstep, sitting there for 3 weeks. Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
18th or 19th, I would take that.
somewhat later.
It's funny. I don't even know why I check that ordered because the date's like different every time I go. So
Yep.
it's made up.
I think they use a random number generator just to.
I'm gonna be bullish here. I'm gonna be the optimist and say that was what was holding them up, and they finally said, "Oh, we can't keep it on hold much longer. So let's just ship it with a dongle."
Yeah, I think they fought. I bet you anything they fought to try and fix this thing because it was the one last thing, and finally hit a point where a PM called the ball and said, if all that's holding you back is this port, what if we disable it?
Ship it. Yep.
I hope to God that there's super glue poured in that port, and that's how lousy that is.
We'll let you know. I'll take it apart. We'll let you know.
I think
But you know what? You don't care. Do you care, Richard, that you have to use a dongle? Or
not
you're not
really.
gonna,
And because in the end, I was even thinking about using it as a server. There's not going to be a screen plugged into that thing.
There you go.
Right.
Headless.
But more, I bet you the case is already made. We're lucky.
That's what I'm saying. I bet the
there might
first
be a
versions
piece
go
of
out.
tape over it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like who knows?
It will literally be like
funny.
one of those silver pieces of tape that says,
Pretty
"Do not remove, or
funny.
your warranty is void."
But and it wouldn't. There's not so many units that you couldn't literally have a guy with a grinder cutting the traces just to disable it.
Sure. There's a few thousand
Good.
probably, right?
Yeah, that's doable. And then the next batch will be made differently.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. I'm going to take that as an encouraging sign.
That's amazing.
Well, it sounds like it's actually going to be a product. Like here's the bigger thing, and I've seen this happen too. The FCC just says nope, can't do it. You have to redesign, and now it's a year, right?
I would love that. Not because I want harm to anybody, but because I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But I that would be amazing. Like we are literally going to cut this part out of it, and they're like, no, that's not enough.
It's not good enough. Yeah. No, well, we dealt with this was UL for an electrical device where it was that kind of thing, and it said, "Oh, you have to completely recertify. Oh, and you have to get to the back of the line too." So 3 months,
right?
Try over.
Yeah, make your changes and start again. It's like, wait, we were just talking to you, but what?
No,
Paul and our
the new
Discord,
Mac Mini's going to come out. Just buy a Mac. Come on, man.
It has an HDMI port.
Well, does
Paul
it? I don't know, maybe. We'll see. But
the new ones may not. I don't know.
Yeah, the new ones may not, but
boy.
I bet they do.
Anyway,
the rumor is they will, but we'll see.
Okay.
Paul in our Discord asked ChatGPT, what does HDMI stand for? And it said, hilarious digital monkey interface.
There you go.
Yep. That's what Qualcomm thought it meant, and now look what happened.
Take this stuff seriously. Oh, well. All right. Thank you for the update.
Oh, boy. That's too bad. I'm sorry.
What else? Surface. Let's talk about something.
So
Let's talk about something that
Microsoft-
does get HDMI or an HDMI port and FCC certification.
Do they? I don't think they do have HDMI ports, actually.
Never mind. Now we know
Microsoft
why.
announced the business versions of Surface Pro 11 and Surface Pro Surface Laptop 7, which is hilarious because they announced those a month ago. I don't quite understand why they did this, but there will be 5G models coming later in September, so that might be the point of it. If you still want a Surface Pro 10, which is the Intel Meteor Lake version, not Lunar Lake, they will also offer a 5G version for business starting September 26th. So I don't know. So, of course, I've already gotten 2 people have emailed me and said, so is there going to be a Lunar Lake version? I mean, what about an AMD version? And I would just point you to history and say it's Surface, guys. That's not how they do things. So probably not.
You were talking earlier about there's going to be vendors like the Dells of the world that are going to make a model that literally comes in all 3 chipsets.
That's right.
Surface has never done that.
Surface, that's true. Yeah, that's
Surface
true.
Never done.
They've done not all 3. That's true. Yeah, they've done Intel and AMD.
I would have said they didn't even do 2, but okay.
They did 2 too. So one Surface laptop, I don't remember which version. For maybe somewhere in there you could have an AMD or an Intel choice. Kind of interesting. And if you go to the Surface Pro 9, there was Intel and Qualcomm.
Right.
And then Surface Pro X, I think that I don't remember anymore, but yeah, there were a few, but no, certainly never all 3.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep. So yeah. I almost said something. Okay. So and then tomorrow, the next day, you can expect HP and Lenovo to have announcements.
Before IFA, of course. It's Wednesday.
Yeah,
IFA doesn't start till Friday.
So we'll have a follow up next week on the remainder of the announcements.
Plus, you're actually going to go to the IFA, and I can't wait to hear what it's like.
I mean, I might drive by it.
On your way to Currywurst, I get it.
Do they have Currywurst there? There is the first time I ever had pig knuckle, right, which is an awesome German meal, was actually Munich. Inside the mess. It wasn't a tent, but like the mess tent inside of Cbit. And it's possible there's good food there. I don't know. I probably won't find out. But there is I have a press badge waiting for me if I do decide to go.
You got to at least step foot in the place.
Do I?
I guess
we'll see.
Yeah.
You think did I come to Germany to go to a trade show? I mean, come on. I don't know. So I would like to direct everyone's attention to something rather incredible, which is for some reason, yesterday actually, but today, the Wall Street Journal published a story about how Qualcomm Snapdragon X-based PCs can't play games. This is not timely. Why would Yang Ji, who I think we all know from the Wall Street Journal, that celebrated journalist, write a story about a 3-month-old processor right as Intel is launching new processors? And Intel has this exact marketing message. I mentioned this earlier. They were beating this exact thing to death. Why would they do that? I mentioned earlier, I'm just throwing out ideas that Intel pays a lot of money to make sure that Qualcomm and, well, AMD mostly, but now Qualcomm, doesn't get any free rides anywhere. And I find this to be very suspicious. So here's one of the things I find suspicious about this article. It never mentions AMD. According to this article, there's only Intel, and now there's Qualcomm. And Qualcomm is terrible. Qualcomm does not play games. Half of the games that they tested did not run smoothly on Qualcomm. This is like a bizarre hit job from a business publication whose readers would never consider these computers to begin with. Why would they have written this story? I find this to be rather incredible. Like I said, you could search the article, how many times they say AMD, 0. How many times they say Qualcomm, if my memory serves, 14. Lot of dumping on Qualcomm in here. And they talk to experts who I believe were supplied by Intel. I might work for Intel. I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't know what happened here. Like, I have no idea why this publication would write this article. It makes no sense. I'm just saying it happened exactly as Intel launched their new processor.
This paragraph is like an ad for Intel.
That's what I'm saying. It's crazy.
Intel aims to introduce its own chips for PCs with Copilot Plus AI functions in September. Computer makers expect widespread sales of those Intel-powered models next year. At that point, gamers could purchase one of the Intel devices and avoid the Qualcomm ARM issue. Here's the thing. This is appalling.
I think both of you guys will have experienced this, where you get up in the morning and you check your email. And there are some number of PR outreaches, some of which are so ludicrous you might read them aloud to your wife or your spouse, and you'll say, you're never going to believe this, but apparently Philadelphia is the second handiest city in the U.S., and I don't know why I got that PR outreach today. Hilariously, so did my wife. So we both got that one. But you ignore these things. I block them and I mark them as spam, or if it's a legit something, I just ignore it. But I think Intel reached out to Zhang Ji there and said, hey, we got a story. I might want to look into it. And they took the bait.
And they also took a bunch of the copy, because this is word for word.
What? Is it from an Intel press release?
Does it not sound like it was written by Intel? Yeah. Seriously.
Larry Shi, a 39-year-old gamer in Shanghai, said he'd wait for Intel. He doubted serious gamers would even consider PCs powered by ARM.
ARM is silly. Am I right? They make toys with ARM.
You can't play a lot of AAA games on a Mac either.
So they mention, let's see. How many times they mention Apple? Once.
Yeah.
How many times they mention Mac? 3 times actually.
It does
Macs
say,
enjoy
although
a loyal following among non-gamers.
Macs do enjoy a loyal following among non-gamers.
I'm sorry, actually, Mac is only twice.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a hit job. This is a
insane.
bald-faced, disgusting hit job.
I honestly long suspected the Wall Street Journal of really being in the pocket.
It's there for everyone to see. You can just read it for yourself and tell me what you think, because it reads like a YouTube influencer would do something like this, or like a blogger trying to make a name for himself or something. Like, this is disgusting, and it's in the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. It's not Bob's blog, Yeah. It's gross. And look, by the way, the central point is correct. I mean, actually, Copilot Plus PCs are terrible for games. Like, everyone who's reviewed one of these things has made that point. But why would you? Why would it need to be written? Like, there's nobody has these things. Yeah. Nobody's like, I'm just going to see what Lunar Lake looks like, and I
was about to buy it. Then I read this article, and
are you kidding me? Crazy. I've never.
Thank you, Wall Street Journal, for saving me. Yeah. I was going to try to play Sea of Thieves on my Qualcomm PC,
and by the way, as a gamer myself, I read the Wall Street Journal for this kind of hard-hitting facts about games, because those guys, I mean, they're experts. That's who I go to. What is this? It's crazy. Yeah. So again, I feel like I'm like that. I'm just asking questions. Yeah. That's what this feels like to me. But
every so often I get approached for interesting marketing packages for the show, right? And there's pieces there's the things they should be buying, like an ad spot, and maybe that they always ask for one more thing where it's like, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, right. They always do this for us. They say, they pretend that they're interested in ads, for instance.
Yep.
Right.
And then they say, and we'd like to get our executive on Windows Weekly. Can we do that? And we say, no.
Not an interview show.
It's not an interview show. You want to know why I don't interview industry executives? That's why.
Yeah.
Ever.
So gross. Yeah.
Well, Chris Capicella.
Chris is great. Yeah.
He's different. And I doubt Microsoft ever begs you to get Chris on. In fact, they probably beg you not to put Chris on.
No, that was him. They didn't want him on.
No, I'm sure they didn't. Yeah. He's too honest. Where did he end up, by the way? Do we know?
He hasn't ended up anywhere. I know. I was just talking to Mary Jo about this. It's really interesting.
It's not like he's struggling to pay the bills.
Well,
no, he's doing fine. But
in fact, Mark Gurman was talking about this in his latest newsletter. It's a problem Apple has too. If you're a successful company and your longtime executives have stock options, they're by now worth so much money they don't need to work.
So this is a couple of years ago, but I didn't mention this earlier. But the architect of the Zen architecture at AMD works for Intel now.
Yeah.
Right. So this is not brand new. I mean, this happened a while ago, but this is another, like, companies spend money to acquire these people, right? So the Apple thing is really unique. What do you do when someone like Johnny Ive leaves, or various executives that they mentioned in that story? It's like, well, you pretend you're staying on.
You throw a lot more money.
You
give them a lot of money at them and say, hey, you don't have to do anything, but can we just say you're
do
still
not
around?
You dare leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what that really is.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yep. It's smart. I mean, honestly, if you can get
it, or don't leave and go to the beach either. I mean, we want to look like
Jim went and played banjo.
You want to have that. Like, Steve Jobs is an extreme example of this, but you want to have that kind of smooth transition thing where someone who's like Bob Mansfield, or the CFO is leaving now, or whomever, like
Luca Maestri, Johnny Ive.
You don't want Johnny Ive is a big one. Like, you don't want the market to like, they're dead.
Exactly. That was the whole point.
No, it's a very smart.
Johnny's not leaving. We've just got a very special.
And then you talk to him 3 years later. He's like, no one even texted me one time. I'm not sure I could find the office anymore.
That's how you know.
Yeah,
that's how you know that neither Paul nor Richard nor I are receiving big bags of cash from anybody.
That's right.
We're still working, kids.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm giving a talk the next month about AI and Windows and stuff. And one of my lines, I'll ruin it right now because this is so beautiful. It's like, can you tell me what the big difference is between me and the Beatles? And it's not, talent. I get it. Stage presence, hilarious. No, it's the Beatles wrote a song and they still get paid for it. And I wrote an article and no one cares when it's 5 seconds old. I have to keep going. I'm like a shark. You can't stop. Like you have to just keep going and going. And that's what that is. We still work.
Residual free business.
There is exactly. I found the ultimate way to never have to stop working. Like I have to keep creating content or I'm pointless. Yeah, it's horrible. Also talent.
I've tried dynamic ad insertion in podcasts. I just find that it's a great way to make a podcast really bad.
Yeah. We do it. But yeah. Somebody said that it's the best way to get people to subscribe to the ad-free version of the podcast.
Or just how to learn to like, you do the thing where you like, ad starts, you're like, bump, 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 they're back. You don't want that either.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so this Wall Street Journal thing is gross.
It is. It's terrible.
It's really quite astonishing.
Yep.
I think that the Discord is discussing whether or not it's actually a bot. It's like,
nice.
Maybe that's not a person. Maybe that's just software.
I hope that's true.
I went and looked, and they put out one piece a month.
Yep.
And they all look pretty.
Well, Richard, you can't test 1,500 games on Snapdragon in your spare time. This is a full-time job.
Yeah.
Gross.
Oh, well.
I know. Anyhow. Okay. Where are we? I don't even know.
We're going to talk about Windows. You want to talk about Windows?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Windows time.
Remember we talked about Windows sometimes?
What a thought.
Windows.
So Windows 11 24H2 is coming down the pike, right? I expect in the next 30 days. Yeah. Again, this time it's personal. So now it's coming, this will be the broad release. Everyone will get it who's, compatible. We still, Microsoft doesn't like talking about things like RTM and general availability. It's not really in their, blood anymore. But, this month, we're in September. So this month, if it hasn't already been, will be finalized. We'll go out of new PCs. The Lunar Lake stuff will almost certainly we'll ship with that. Day one updates, of course, because that's our world. My guess is it's October. It's going to be the same schedule as last year, right? So October will be like a seeker experience, and then November, everyone just kind of starts getting it. CFR essentially, so it will happen over a period of time. And because the feature sets of 22, 23, and 24H2 are essentially lined up, there's not going to be a lot of surprise, right? Like this is kind of the weird thing going on here, because as I went back and looked at what they had announced, that was making it into 24H2. And of course, I run 24H2 on most of my PCs, so I kind of see this stuff, but not all of it, right? One of the weirdest features they've announced is that sidecar thing on start. Like if you have piece, what's it called? Phone link, sorry. Connected with your phone, you'll get this little like sidebar in the start menu. It's like, this weird thing like glommed on. So I've never seen that, right? So that's not been there. One thing that's not in this list, I don't cover a lot of the apps, but the Microsoft Store app has been updated recently so that the downloads and the library stuff is separate in the sidebar. Mm-hmm. But I'm running 50% on that one. Like some computers, it's the old one, some it's the new. I think some of the things you'll definitely see, and if you're if you use Windows 11 today, you're like, I'm seeing these. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's already there. You right click on a file on the desktop or in File Explorer, and instead of the hieroglyphics for cut, copy, paste, save, rename, or not save, rename, delete, whatever, you'll actually see a word that explains what that thing does. Like what an idea! When they first shipped Windows 11, 3 years ago? It's amazing. Is it 3 years? I think it is 3 years.
Those were just not new anymore, right?
Yeah, those were just icons. Like it's like you've taken the most common tasks in Windows and made them indecipherable.
Yeah, and hard to find, and sometimes at the top of the bar and sometimes at the bottom of the bar.
I love that. I love that aspect of it. Yeah. There's a reason for it, and it's insane. And God, I love Microsoft. So there's that. Drag and drop to the File Explorer address bar, which was a feature before, and remember they removed it in 23H2. That's making a comeback. Different compression formats, tar, 7Z, not just zip. Compress, uncompress, both directions, good. My favorite feature, Copilot, is an app. which means that when I open it by mistake, which everyone does and no one has ever done on purpose, you can now hit Control W to close it, which I do every day, 3 to 4 times every day. Because I hit that stupid Copilot key by mistake.
It's just the hovering, the whole right-hand corner of a browser is dangerous, right?
It's brutal. Yeah. There's just not much. Like one of the things I've never seen on a single PC, but will allegedly be in 24H2 is the minimal new look for that tray notification area, the system tray, right? Mm-hmm. Where the date and time display is both minimal. There's no bell icon for notifications because there is not a human being on earth that uses them anyway. Right. And you can still click the date and time to get to that anyway. So there's no need for that. So that's going to be an option. I've never seen it. One I have seen on every computer, this one's very common today, is the new quick settings where you have 6 icons or really tiles or cards for things like Wi-Fi, airplane mode, Bluetooth, etc. The previous 3 versions of Windows 11, you could customize that. You could just determine which cards were there. Mm-hmm. You could add more. You could take some away. You could reorganize them. So they've gotten rid of that. Now you get them all, and that area scrolls in line. So you have to get into that area, and you can kind of scroll in there, and you'll see all of the available. Like on this computer, there's 13 of them. All of the available cards. You can drag and drop to move them around, but you cannot remove ones you don't like because Microsoft. I don't know, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I just wonder where are the customers that were asking for these features.
Those people do not exist. I don't. A lot of the stuff they do, it's just confusing. I mean, some of it's fine, right? There's some accessibility stuff that's good. There's the deprecated app stuff, which is fine. Like I get that stuff. But as far as the hieroglyphics in the context menus, I think customers were asking for that. Like when you right-click the taskbar and didn't get Task Manager in the original version of Windows 11, absolutely people did ask for that. So
they asked for it back. Nobody said, what made the taskbar perfect? If it didn't have the Task Manager in it when I went to click on it.
It's like you have telemetry. People use this, and you removed it anyway. Yeah. What? I don't know.
No, they're trying to make it Mac-ish because they just suddenly had Mac 11 envy.
Yep, that's true. No, that's absolutely true. Yeah. As far as timing, I mean, we kind of touched on most of this already, but we know that Copilot Plus PC will apply to AMD and Intel new PCs only, right? So, there's a lot of recall is coming in preview, supposedly starting in October with the Windows Insider program. Yep. That will not apply to existing computers, right? You have to have an NPU of a sufficient quality to get that. So,
and your high performance GPU doesn't qualify still.
That's right. Yep. So that's the thing. I mean, I expect that to change over time, but that's what we're marketing today. So that's the thing.
They still haven't built that underlying layer for I don't care what scalar processor
the orchestrator. You're talking about the orchestrator. Yep, this is the orchestrator, right? My dream for AI is the orchestrator. Yes.
Well, the ODBC for this layer, but really. DirectX, right?
The printer driver layer. Pick your hardware extraction
device context.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Beautiful. Yes. Yep. Yes. DCs and H-Wins and all that awesome stuff from.
The thing about that was awesome. It was evil and necessary, but it's a sacrifice developers made because it made the user's experience better. Yeah. Right. They took away a business for me. I should have been suing. I used to sit down with companies and go through all the software they used and build the Venn diagram of what printer would work for all of them.
Love it.
Based on available drivers, right?
So they made their lives better and your finances worse.
Yeah, and then made an incredibly difficult development problem. Writing for device context is hard. Yeah, that's a tough abstraction. But
I mean, they're going the final mile right now. They're taking printer drivers away from everybody. So,
because they're dangerous, right? Yeah. The same way they took away video drivers, and for the same flipping reason. Yep. The printer crisis continues. I can't do another run as on it. I've done 3, and I didn't want to even do 1.
That's amazing.
It's huge. And I still get in fact, I just got another email from someone saying, please talk more about printers. It's like, what am I going to say except stab yourself?
I have a PRO reach for you, and it goes like this. You should try buying a printer if you have a Windows and ARM computer. So let me tell you something. It's a nightmare. And if you had an Intel computer, that stuff would just work. That's all I'm saying. You know? So what you should do is test like 1,300 printers. Yeah,
that's just the argument then is then you'd have a printer. And are you better off? I don't think you are. You know?
Oh,
so
boy.
If you guys follow the Wirecutter, they make really good they started out, I think they started out just doing tech, recommendations. They were kind of like the Consumer Reports for tech. And now they're into everything. They review vibrators and it's crazy, but whatever. They've turned into Consumer Reports. And the one device type they review where they don't say, look, this is the best. They say is printers. They say, this is the one that will annoy you the least.
Nice. Yeah. And it's like they're on the ball, right? Like that's actually what you're looking for.
Yeah. There's no such thing. There's no good printer. None of them are good.
Yeah.
But if you want the one that sucks the least, this is the one.
That old HP laser color laserjet that I have in the other room that now I have to print everything twice because the first one's going to be smeared up and then somehow that fixes it and then the next one's fine.
Yep.
I mean, near as I can tell, the next time I replace that thing, it's going to be with the cheap, disposable printer, right? One that I literally toss when it stops printing. I'll buy two and I'll use one. And when it finally fails me, then I put the other one in and I send the other one in for recycling. So that's it. They all suck.
Because we're discussing this, I'm going to jump ahead to the HP results because HP makes two products, PCs and printers.
Right.
Their PC business is approximately 3/4 of their revenues. The other, 2/3. So they made $13.5 billion in the most recent quarter. 9.4 of that was from PCs and 4.9 billion. No, that's not true. I'm sorry. I had the math wrong. Sorry. 4.1 billion is PC. So we'll call it 3/4, 1/4. I hate to even say this. This is crazy. If you look just at their printer business, how do you think their printer business makes money? Do you think they sell printers?
Nope.
No.
It's 100% ink.
Yeah.
Yep. 65%. But yes, it's 65% of their revenues come from
ink.
It's supplies, but
generated by horrible software tormenting you to try and subscribe to ink.
Ink as a service, right? This is one of their business models. It's kind of hilarious.
This is where Microsoft taking over printer drivers might actually make that stuff go away. Like Microsoft might be the good guy here, which is weird.
Yeah. Anyway, I that's stuck out to me. I was, you go through their charts and graphs and their numbers. You're like, boop, boop, wait, what? It's like, what's going on here? That would be like saying their PC business, 65% of their revenues came from like game controllers or it's like, wait, what's going on here? Like, what is this thing? But most of their money does come from PCs and
which is the old compact business, right?
HP also had HP and compact combined. HPE, spun they're kind of what is now basically a cloud business, but their server business spun out obviously a couple of years ago. So they had their first revenue growth in quite a while, which was good. They credited the PC market, but slight rebound here. But honestly, revenue growth in the PC business was 4.9% year over year, which is not great. But unit sales growth was just 1% up. Commercial business, as we saw with Dell and Lenovo, much bigger than their consumer business. 71% of their sales by revenue come from commercial PCs, not from consumers, which ties into what Richard said earlier. Like no one's like, oh my God, I can't wait to buy the next computer. What's happening? No one really thinks like that anymore, unfortunately.
Now, I mean, in those, did they talk about like any of the enterprise lines? Like they own Cray computers for crying out loud. They own Aruba networking. Like
no.
they own big.
If they own Cray, that's probably part of the HPE now, not HP, I would think.
Yeah, it's HPE.
Yeah, so no, that's a separate company.
This is not. It's just a separate entity. So.
This is just the PC maker part. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, the printers. Yeah. Anyway, I would say meager gains. I mean, any gain is a good gain, obviously, but we've had a couple of years now where we're kind of hoping like, okay, maybe this is the year. And I think, the PC growth stuff is happening, but it's not.
The question is this PC growth through FUD? Is this the AI hype making people need to buy machines?
No, you know what this really is really well, actually for now it's good. Good what I'll call good year over year comparables. We always compare revenue to the year ago quarter. quarter was a bloodbath, and so
it's not hard to do better than not actually bleeding.
Yeah. And we're not talking about like pre-COVID numbers or anything like that.
No.
This is just compared to last year, they're doing better, but I would argue that's kind of a low bar.
Yeah.
No, the consensus seems to be that this AI PC thing is going to implode. So later in the show, we're going to talk about NVIDIA and Intel and some of the bad stuff going on there. There is some evidence now that the what do you call it? The trough of despair is a cliff.
The trough of
infinite height.
Right?
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. We're about to hit it. It looks like so. That's coming. But anyway,
this is what Uncle Satya bet on.
Yeah. Well,
the trough of disillusionment is upon.
I think we've talked about this. There's a version of the world where Microsoft wins by losing, which I only mean they'll be on the back end like electricity, and they'll be doing okay because of Azure and maybe their first party stuff.
Cash cows are cash cows, right? They still exist, right? There are product lines at Microsoft with even more inertia, right?
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm pointing at Visual Studio, right? Like,
yeah.
Your primary customers don't want you to change it at all. They buy it every year.
Right.
What
do you do?
And there's no new customers coming in because you've been doing what your existing customers want.
Yeah. That turns out that's not, they should talk to Steve Jobs. Oh, wait. He had some opinions about that.
Mm-hmm. No, it's totally innovator's dilemma.
I'm going to pat myself on the back. I don't do this a lot. But last week, I saw a story that Microsoft was going to let people uninstall Recall.
Right.
In fact, sorry, that's not even what the story said. It said, Microsoft is letting you uninstall it now. And I thought, that's fascinating. It's not even available in preview.
How can I uninstall?
Why would they let you uninstall it now? But sure enough, if you installed last month's Week D preview update for Windows 11 24H2, and you went into the Windows Features control panel, which no normal human being could find or would want to find, this is the place where you install such things as Hyper-V, the Windows virtualization platform and so forth. Sure enough, there it is. It's in the list. It says Recall. So when I wrote this article, I wrote it up because it's there. It is there. And my headline was, Microsoft will apparently let you uninstall Recall. And
this is like uninstalling Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, this is the opposite of what we saw in the Wall Street Journal. Like, this was me being like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, first of all, like I said, it's not available yet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of qualification in what I wrote. So, in fact, I'll just, I said, whether this change is retained in next month's Patch Tuesday update and beyond is an unknown. Perhaps this work is being done ahead of the Recall preview, which will be tested in the Insider program. Maybe it's a mistake or a test. No one outside of Microsoft knows, and no one inside of Microsoft is saying a thing as usual. Like, this didn't make sense to me, so that's how I wrote it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 days later, Microsoft said, "Oh, just kidding. It was a mistake. We're not doing that." So yeah, it was a mistake. Because why would you let people uninstall something that doesn't exist? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, the good news is you won't be able to tell if you succeeded or not.
Also, like, let's say you wanted to uninstall Recall. Mm-hmm. This isn't where you uninstall things. This is built into settings now. System components that you can uninstall are in settings.
Right.
That's where they would put it. I don't, whatever. It never made sense to me. So for 2 days, all the three of the conspiracy theorists that hate Recall were celebrating, and then this reality came crashing down. So it's over. So I hope you enjoyed that moment in the sun there. It's over. So anyway, there's that. And then just a couple of quick things here. So Vivaldi, their version of their desktop browser is now fully native on Windows 11 on ARM. So they've been working on that for 3 months. So that's great. And there has only been one drop, unless something happened today, and knowing Microsoft, it probably did, of beta or preview bill. I almost said beta bills. Beta. I miss beta. Windows Insider Canary and beta channels have had new builds late last week, and there's actually a lot of stuff in there, right? So some of it is things that we've kind of seen out in the world, things that are coming, like the ability to share to your Android phone if you have it connected through phone link using Windows Share, a feature nobody uses except for me. A change to widgets where if you're left aligning your start button in the taskbar, this thing will now appear over on the right next to the system tray where it looks horrible and out of place. They're giving you time estimates on Windows updates so you can know how long you'll be offline. There's lots of little things in both these builds. So that's cool. It's nice. They're kind of, I think they're firing up for the post 24H2 stuff that's going to come later in the year. So
yeah. Well, and it's always good to see more native software for ARM. This thing, I mean, I would want to compare this back to the WinRT days and say, like, have we got more software than back then? Like, are we getting closer to reality here?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. But I guess I'd want to go dig the numbers up, but I haven't.
Closer to reality. That's all one can ever hope for.
I mean, it's only been 12 years, so
wow,
it's all good.
Wow.
Time is an illusion. Delivery time doubly so.
My kids have become adults in that time frame. Yeah. They both don't live in our house anymore. But whatever.
It's an amazing thing.
Like what's 12 years? Who cares?
Do you want to take a little break here and we can go on and talk about AI, antitrust, and more?
Yeah.
All right. This episode of Windows Weekly brought to you by 1Password. You're going to say, wait a minute, I have a password manager. No, this is something new. And this is really exciting. Now, let me ask you a question. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? No, of course not. How do you keep your company safe when it's their data safe when your data is sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? Right? That's the question. Well, 1Password has the answer. This is something new: extended access management. 1Password EAM helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device. It solves problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Here's how you can visualize this. Your company's security is like the quad of a college campus. There's nice brick paths leading between the ivy-covered buildings. Those are the company-owned devices, the IT-approved apps, the managed employee identities. Then every quad has it. There are paths, little dirt paths across the beautiful manicured lawn. The paths people actually use as shortcuts worn through the grass that are actually the straightest line from building A to building B. That's the ones your employees use. Those are the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities too, like contractors. The problem is most security tools only work on those happy little paths, but a lot of security problems take place on the little dirt shortcuts. That's why you need 1Password extended access management. It's the first security solution that brings all those unmanaged devices and apps and identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. It's security for the way we work today. It's now generally available to companies using Okta and Microsoft Entra, and it's in beta for Google Workspace customers. You really have to check this out. It's brilliant. Check it out. 1password.com/Windows Weekly. That's the number 1, PASSWORD.com/Windows Weekly. We thank 1Password for their support for the show. And we thank you for supporting us by going to that address, 1password.com/Windows Weekly. I think you really need that. Now, let's get back to Paul and Richard.
Well, I linked to the long story, so I can't look at it. But Microsoft is hosting an event soon, and the big rumor is that they might actually be rebranding Copilot.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Well, what are you going to call it? Copilot Plus PC?
I think designated driver works. I would go with
the smart guy under the hood.
That inflatable pilot from the airplane movie where he's just like, just floating there. I don't know.
Never been in a Turkish prison?
Yeah, exactly. You've ever seen a grown man naked? I always like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar thing where he's like, you tried dragging Bill Walton up and down the court for 48 minutes a night. Anyway. We're
talking the movie Airplane, kids.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, check it out.
So, I think we all agreed that Copilot was actually like a really good brand.
That's because GitHub thought of it.
Yeah, that's right. Started at GitHub.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft was so overexcited about finally coming up with a good brand that they beat it to death.
Yeah. What brand haven't they beat?
You mean like Outlook?
Or like Windows? Remember when you could get Windows Media Player from Mac? You know, like peak Microsoft naming. Like, it's just, like, come on, guys.
Or .NET. I mean, they put .NET on everything.
.NET.
And Azure they put on everything. Like, you know, they love beating a brand to death. And part of it is getting a new name through legal is so difficult. It's like, I'm allowed to use this name. I'm using this name.
It's not just that, but like in this case, it actually made sense. Like it was like, okay, like we talk about the side-by-side experiences and Copilot, like so we'll see. I'm not sure I have an opinion about this, but then again, I don't know what the new brand might be. So I still, cut them back a little bit, but I think Copilot's okay. I don't know. We'll see. Back in March, Microsoft surprised the world by hiring basically everyone who worked for Inflection, but then said, "Oh, we're not buying Inflection. We're just buying all of their IP and everyone who works there."
Right.
So that company sort of still exists in the same way that AOL sort of still exists, but it's not really. Yeah, it's not really the same company.
No.
So I don't know I can't imagine the UK was the only country that looked into this, but the CMA looked into it to see if this was in fact a merger or an acquisition, right? And if true, whether it would impact competition. And they actually, the announcement was in March. The UK looked into them in July, and so it's only a month or two later. But they've come back and said two things. First, no worries about competition. Inflection wasn't selling something that people were using anyway, so it's not like this is changing the dynamic. But by the way, absolutely a merger. You bought that company, so that's kind of interesting.
Now, why bother? Is just to say precedent-wise, like, listen, when you do this, we consider it a merger, and we're going to scrutinize it the same way. Don't think you're fooling anybody here.
Yeah. So what they said was, look, we feel like you did this to skirt regulation or oversight, whatever. And now when you acquire anybody or hire people, we reserve the right to look at that under these.
Expect us to.
Yep. And
they don't have to reserve the right. They already had the right. But they could just.
But I just want to remind you we're here.
We're not too dumb.
Yep. So we have our theories. But I would think that other regulators from other countries should look at this, and not that there's any like precedent.
I think other regulators do. I don't think anybody's confused by what an acqui-hire is, right? Like it's silly to even consider the possibility this would legally make any difference at all.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to move quick and not get stopped by what happened with Activision Blizzard, right? So I think, like you said, I think everyone is very clear on what's happening here. Interesting though, right? I mean, it's interesting. Whatever. Okay. ChatGPT, which, not acqui-hire either, but still worthy of.
Wait for the bankruptcy. So.
They now have 200 million weekly active users. That's double the number it was a year ago. This was the thing, I think Richard was the one who kind of speculated, or maybe it's just pointed out that, Microsoft looked at the numbers they had at the time and said, we got to get me some of that. We've had this thing called Bing that nobody seems to know or care about for many, many years, and they just surpassed us in monthly average users, so it didn't work out so well. 100 million
users in a month. You sit up and take notice.
You're like, hey, we invested a lot in that company, didn't we? Yeah, let's start using that stuff. So, that story we know about, that's happened. But
the lot's a relative concept. At that point, it was only 3 billion.
Yeah, I know.
Only.
We're going to talk about numbers soon, man, because when we get to NVIDIA, it's astonishing what's happening. But anyway, so there's that. Firefox 130 is out. Not a big deal, other than if you go into settings, there's now I think it's called Firefox Labs area of settings, and there's 3 or 4 of those now, or 2 or 3. One of them is the ability to plug in the chat bot of your choice. Well, not your choice. There's 6 or 7 of them. You can choose what they have.
Of an array of choices.
Copilot is not one of those choices. ChatGPT is one of those choices. And Firefox, like other browsers, has a sidebar. and you can have that thing come up while you're reading an article, and you can do all the chat body stuff. And because it's integrated into Firefox, it will have that context. So when you say, hey, summarize this article, it knows, hey, oh, there's the article right next door. So they have this is, I think, in a very Firefoxy way to do this.
Yeah. That's just giving the chatbot access to the DOM.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting. Like I would say, if you look at like Brave or Opera, they have slightly different models from each other and from this. And they all kind of reflect the kind of company and, what they're all about. And Mozilla, I think they're just like, look, we can't even handle web apps. So obviously we're not going to have a chatbot, but we know people are interested. So we're going to do this plugin system. And
there you go.
Yeah. You can have it if you want it. You can ignore it if you don't. So I think that makes sense. And then Proton, because now I guess I'm obligated to mention Proton every single week.
This is 4 in a row now, something like that.
It could be.
You love your Proton, man. You love it.
They just announce stuff all the time. So they have something called. People probably don't know this. So they have something called Proton.
By the way, the Wall Street Journal just called and they said, "Hey."
Yes, nice. Hey, Thurrott.
Hey,
how much is Proton paying you, buddy? Yeah. All right, fair enough. I wish they were, but no, I talk about this stuff because it's great. I've never actually used this particular service, but they have something called Proton Scribe, which is an AI writing tool. Previously was only available to their business customers. Still is, obviously. They support more languages now, whatever. That's kind of good. But you can actually get it as an individual in a family or duo plan now as well. So if AI writing assistance is just, again, we're hitting kind of table stakes at this point. It's like everyone's doing this, and they have the good privacy model and that stuff. So if you need that kind of thing, and I don't know if you're attached to privacy for some reason, you weirdo, they're there for you. So that's the thing.
And it's a bunch of physicists. What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly.
Everything will be fine.
Yeah, it's not a Dan Brown model. It probably will be fine. Relax.
Yeah. I guess. How long is the Xbox segment? Is it really?
We have an antitrust thing before that, so I could do a couple of antitrust.
Why don't you do a little antitrust? Yeah. I'll move the Melissa down, and we'll do an ad after that. Okay.
Yeah, so the UK CMA is not done with Microsoft. They've asked companies that have complained about Apple and their App Store fees and licensing terms to submit comments, and Microsoft did, and they were not surprisingly critical. So this has come up before, but what they basically said was that obviously they're screwing around, right? So we know they're doing the malicious non-compliance thing in the EU. This is the UK CMA, so it's not the same regulatory body, but they are obviously talking to the CMA as well and trying to figure out something that makes sense there. Just not as high profile. And Microsoft basically explained the way that they're doing things. They've changed it 3 times since the initial complaint back earlier this year. And all they've done is, they move pieces around. So there's no version of this where Microsoft can host a game streaming service on iPhone or iPad and have it make sense financially. Like it's just designed to give Apple 30% of everything. And they also
model, really.
Yeah, they pulled NVIDIA into this. NVIDIA's GeForce Now. It's the same thing. And there's a reason you don't see these apps on their store. It's because they've orchestrated it so that it will not ever make sense financially for us. And we'll see. So Apple came back and said, nada, no, we're not. And if you read their response, it's just like we never had the conversation. They just say things that are like from 2 years ago. It's like, no, wait, we're having a new conversation now. And they just, they're not listening. They don't want to make this they don't want to make this right.
Right.
I'm surprised this wasn't kind of bigger news, but Yelp sued Google for antitrust violations in the United States based on the fact that Google was found guilty of having, I'm going to call it an illegal monopoly. That's not really a term, but it's, in other words, a monopoly that they are abusing illegally.
Mm-hmm.
Yelp is
but it makes
Google,
sense to do it now that they've been declared.
Yeah, now it's now you have the precedent, right? Let's go. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of this stuff. But Yelp is interesting because Yelp is a little bit like Spotify is to Apple in the EU, in that they were very early on complaining about this, but they never launched a lawsuit.
Right.
Also, Google tried to buy Yelp.
Yep.
Yelp agreed, and then Google pulled out and just copied their stuff, which seems to be part of the whole playbook for Google. Like they did this to Spotify. I mean, they're kind of terrible that way. Yelp has a Yelp CEO. Other executives from Yelp have appeared at countless governments. The Senate will have a hearing and about antitrust, and those guys always show up and complain about Google, but they've never actually formally launched an antitrust suit against them, and now they have. So, small company, relatively speaking, obviously, and they go into great detail about how people will search for Yelp specifically, or sort of local things, and Google just promotes their own services. It's very typical. It's a standard whatever.
Well, Yelp's got their own lawsuit problems too, right? Because the restaurants were saying they were essentially extorting from them. Like,
yeah,
if you didn't do certain things, and then they only the bad reviews would appear, like that kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
I mean, they're a tiny player in this equation comparatively. Right. They're not one of the tech giants.
This is so this is the type of complaint that people will level against, like Epic Games or something.
Yeah,
be like, Epic Games is like a pretty big company, Paul, and they're pretty terrible too. And it's like, yeah, but they're like
differently.
Epic Games compared to Apple is like me compared to Epic Games. Like it's just not.
But I would argue that you don't go suing Google because the discovery is going to be bad.
Well, but here's the thing. So unless you do have a dominant monopoly, certain behaviors are perfectly acceptable in a company that doesn't have a monopoly. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any feelings about Yelp. I couldn't care less. Yelp to me is like a brand like Yahoo or Expedia. It's like, seriously, there's still a thing. Like but that's unfair in a way, because the reason I think like that is because Google Maps, or search is so dominant that I just don't even think about it anymore. So in that sense, Google's efforts have been successful because I just go to Google,
Yeah, because you're already there.
It's easy, so yeah, it's a little unfair, but
the nature of monopolies.
Yep. Yeah, literally. That's exactly right. And then, Leo, I don't know if you want me to keep going, but
point.
Well, I think this now would be a good time to talk about
there's some big stuff.
Our little non-AI friend, Melissa. Yay. This episode of Windows Weekly brought to you by Melissa. Melissa's been the data quality expert since 1985. And you know what? If you're a company, data, your customer information, your supplier list, all those addresses and emails and phone numbers, that's gold. You can't let that slide, let that wither away, let that decay. And whether you need the full white glove service or just the nuts and bolts, Melissa is the best way to do that for your enterprise. Melissa has helped over 10,000 businesses worldwide harness accurate data with their industry-leading solutions, processing over 1 trillion with a T addresses, names, emails, and phone records. Melissa offers integrations and apps and platforms and spreadsheet editors, so you don't even have to leave your existing platform, whether it's Microsoft 365, Google Sheets, Dynamics 365, Esri, Stripe, Shopify. Melissa's just all in there. It's integrated in. So Melissa makes it easy for you to cleanse and standardize your data within those popular platforms that you're already using. You see, no retraining or anything. It helps you improve ROI. It optimizes your business efficiency. It elevates the customer experience. Be sure to check out Melissa Marketplace, where you have on-demand access to premium third-party data, which will help you improve campaign performance, enhance data visualization, and drive better business decisions. Some of the resources you can choose from include consumer, property owner, and business contact data, broken down by industry, location, job title, and 400 other attributes. There's a global address database, a master list of 200 plus million verified USPS addresses, coverage for 40 plus countries, and U.S. Postal Service carrier route and boundaries, zip code data, parcel boundaries, plus other location data for the U.S. and Canada. Melissa now offers transparent pricing for all its services, so you can eliminate the guesswork when estimating your business budget. And Melissa's services use secure encryption for all file transfers. And this is important because I know you're worried They're going to give them this data, but they have an information security ecosystem built on the ISO 27001 framework. They also adhere to GDPR policies, maintain SOC 2 compliance. Your data is gold, and they treat it as such at Melissa. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. MELISSA. Melissa.com/twit. We thank Melissa so much for supporting Windows Weekly. We thank you for supporting us by going to that address, melissa.com/twit. Now, if I click the right button, I will merely shrink. Well, let's fix that. But my voice will not go away. That's unacceptable.
That's not acceptable.
Buttons. Who's got the button? All right.
Leo, it's been a couple of weeks. You're getting smoother. I'll tell you.
Not smooth enough yet, but I'll get there. I'm working on it. I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
This is like the early days, you know?
Yeah. Life in the attic.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Now everybody's where they ought to be.
There you go.
It is very much
a little
somebody
seasick
said,
from the back and forth thing, but it's fine.
Somebody, I wish we could fix that. Somebody said that we can't. That it is like the attic. It's like more intimate. It's not like I'm in a big studio with lots of people around. It's just me.
Yep.
My little meatloaf sandwich, cup of coffee, and you.
Do like a good meatloaf sandwich.
A little metal lunch bucket.
So good.
Like a Scooby-Doo lunch box.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, actually, I don't need a lunchbox because the kitchen's just downstairs.
Nice.
So I put it on a plate with a napkin like a civilized human.
I'm like a 5-second walk from Currywurst. I'm just saying.
Oh,
Just saying.
I can't say that. No. All right. Moving right along, my friends.
Yeah, this is crazy. So Intel, I don't know if you heard this. They're having some problems.
I think it's crazy. I think it's
so
positioning.
Apparently, Pat Gelsinger and some of his executive staff have consulted with the company's bankers and will present options to the company's board of directors this month about moving forward under reduced circumstances, right? So we're all...
Are they going to move to the attic too?
That's what you're talking about.
They're moving back to the garage they started in.
Wow.
Probably So, yeah, it's kind of a tough one. So the consensus here seems to be that they're probably not going to go this route first. But one of the things that's on the table is splitting the company up, by which I mean taking the foundry business, which, by the way, lost $9 billion last year, and making it a separate business, right? Which they're kind of positioning it that way right now, even though it's part of their earnings. They do separate it out so you can see like what the different sides of the business look like. But
is this an acknowledgement by Gelsinger that... Because he did want to separate the two businesses, but not like into two separate companies.
No, not.
Is this an acknowledgement that his strategy is not working?
I would call it an acknowledgement. It's more of a maybe evidence. It's
reading the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah. So I always think about Nokia when this kind of thing comes up because one of the big anchors with Nokia when it came to Microsoft, most of it, was that they also had facilities all over the world. And it was kind of an old school business. And like their competitors didn't do things that way. And at one time, that was a huge advantage for Nokia. And then it became a disadvantage, It's
expensive.
Now, look, this is a little more nuanced. First of all, they have to ramp up. Intel itself is spending north of $100 billion to do this transformation. The U.S. government is contributing through loans and just straight up subsidies, tens and tens of billions, to get some form of domestic chip making capacity going, right?
As a strategic asset, the same way you make sure you make your own food.
It's a national security asset. It's serious, right? Because if China takes over Taiwan, that's
which by the way is impossible. They can't take it over. Okay. They can destroy it, but they can't take it over.
Okay.
Those there's no way that happens and those fabs don't go offline and we're all in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And then Paul froze. Then there was a moment of frozen Paul. The Currywursts are upon him.
Oh, it does look like that Currywurst repeated on him, didn't it?
There you go. Yeah, no, it's 10 o'clock at night now.
He's not happy. Oh, that's the face of too many Currywursts.
Yeah.
Right there. Oh, there's Paulie.
What's happening?
You're back. We don't know what happened. You disappeared.
So I just blue screened.
Wow.
Nice.
Yep. It happens to all of us.
Which
Yep.
what system is this?
I believe, yeah. I believe this is the first time I've ever seen this on a Snapdragon X computer. But
Wow.
Yeah.
there.
So this is your
Yeah.
Surface.
So in case you thought it wasn't real Windows, there you go.
Blue
There
screen.
you go.
Do you
Yeah,
have
that was the
CrowdStrike
first.
installed?
Yeah, well, yeah. Who doesn't? What do you mean? I.
Wow.
Oh boy. Anyhow, sorry about that. So where was I? Intel something. Yeah. So what we've heard since that story came out is just that Intel is Pat Gelsinger is probably going to go to the board of directors and say, look, here's cost cutting, something. And, if we have to, we'll go there. But he's not going to walk up with the nuclear bomb on the first try. Right. So
The financing is usually a big play in this. Banks want to raise your rates because you're higher risk. And so you offer to break the business units apart because one of them would be lower risk. You get a better rate. And the bank comes to the sense and goes, oh, no, that would be riskier for both. So these are heavyweight negotiating games between a bunch of significant entities. One of them is Intel, I think, and one of them is the banks, and another one is the U.S. government.
Right. Yeah. So, right. There's an editorial to be written about what Intel should do, and I'm sure we all have our opinions. It's a little early, but yeah, the national security aspect of it. There's some version of this where maybe the government, too big to fail, something. We'll see. I don't know enough about where they're at financially to even make an opinion there, but it's troubling. And by the way, if you didn't think it could get any worse, there's a report today in Reuters that Broadcom has been trying for months to get Intel's this 18A. This is their manufacturing process, the one that's going to be competitive. Cannot get viable chips out of this thing. And they did provide a comment and say, look, we haven't made a decision yet. This is too early to say, but there's some indication that one of their big initial partners might just walk away. Our customers, I guess.
And the other thing that's going on with the CHIPS Act and all so forth is that the number of fabs is going up and the demand is not. So this leaves room for Intel to fail more.
Right.
Like the strategic asset side of protecting Intel goes down if there's sufficient chip capacity elsewhere.
I know. It's a weird one. During this AI boom, one of the things that's come up is this notion that Google, which is just dominant, right? Given the right set of circumstances, could suddenly become irrelevant, right? Which is an astonishing assertion. But all of a sudden, antitrust regulators around the world have woken up. The U.S. government has found it to be, illegally abusing their monopoly, and things could change, pretty dramatically. So that could be happening to Intel right now. I mean, it's scary and weird, but we'll see. I don't know. In related news, NVIDIA, by all accounts, going gangbusters, right? And they just released their latest quarterly results. And I don't know if you're following this, but they're, from a financial perspective, are hitting it out of the park. In fact, they're hitting it out of the county. And this is the fourth quarter in a row where they've had triple-digit growth, revenue, and profit year over year. Remember, we just talked about this. These things are measured year over year. And they gave some, an expectation for the current and future quarters, and it was fine, but was not blockbuster anymore. Because here's the thing. When you're delivering 200-something% growth, that doesn't last, right? And at some point, your comparables will be to the year where you had 200% growth or whatever the number was. So in the most recent quarter, their revenues were up 122%. So not 200-something, but 122. And here's the problem. Next quarter, the quarter after that, they're going to compare themselves to this past year where everything went gangbusters for them. And there's no way
that's impossible.
They can continue. It's impossible. Right. It's impossible. It's mathematically
and they
impossible.
have not made a new chipset to what they've
They
done is
have
just
one-
press their existing chipset for.
That's right. So they have one coming out in December, supposedly. Although there's been problems. This is the thing, right? So they're running into that kind of physics problem that everyone runs
and that
into.
you can't hurry these things. It's flipping hard.
Yeah. So I'm just getting a small pat on my back. Again, I say I don't do this, but I'm doing it twice in one show. But when I wrote this up, I had a cautionary note at the end. I said, expectations for the future were likely overblown. NVIDIA cannot maintain 200% plus growth forever. That's how I ended that story.
Wow.
Now, when I wrote the notes this morning, initially, I was before I headed over to an event. That was the story I had about NVIDIA.
Right.
Then I got to the event, and I was at the event, and the event ended, and I checked my newsfeed, and there was another story about NVIDIA.
Yeah.
And this escalated. So over the past 24 hours, NVIDIA has suffered a historic decline in their value because investors have looked at this business and said, it's not going to be like that anymore, is it? And they lost $280 billion in value in one day, the biggest drop in market cap ever for a U.S. company.
But only a 10% decline. That's what happens
But only
when you're
a
a $3
10%
trillion
decline.
company, right? Like that's
right.
the problem with playing with trillions.
Yep. But, oh boy. So, but here's the thing. This could be one of those snowball things, right? Because it's not just NVIDIA. NVIDIA has a supply chain. NVIDIA has a whole bunch of customers and partners and, companies like Microsoft, Google, all the big tech guys who are buying from them, every one of which wants to get rid of it, right? Still maybe the funniest thing Richard has ever said, literally, at Ignite last year when they brought out the CEO from NVIDIA, basically lifted him up and carried him around the stage. And then he left and he said, all right, let's announce the chips that we're going to replace NVIDIA with. Like, it was crazy, And that's the thing. Like, every one of these companies is trying to get rid of NVIDIA.
Sure.
And, stacked on top of that, this little AI boom and the trough of despair and all that stuff, it might be ending. Like, we might literally have already hit peak NVIDIA and peak AI. Like, we could be on the downside of that curve right now.
Yeah.
And it could snowball. So we'll see. I always felt like NVIDIA was perhaps insanely inflated, frankly, but everyone was buying this. I don't know. It's hard to explain how they rose so fast, but
no, it's not hard to explain it all, right? The whole tech sector jumped on the AI thing. NVIDIA happened to be right place at right time and didn't screw it up.
That's true.
Right? This was, you just stay the course, you get to go on a ride. This is not, you're the innovator. You didn't make this market. This market came and flew over you.
It's true. Yeah, you tripped over it and then held it up. I don't know that there's ever been anything like this in history. I mean, not to this degree. It's just the size of it is just astonishing.
Well, and you're hinting at the bigger part here, which is the reason the U.S. government did not go, the U.S. did not go into recession is 6 companies. All playing the hype game here,
right?
And
this is Wall Street. It's really speculation.
Yeah, and it's speculation that literally bridged an economy.
Yeah, NVIDIA is worth they're still the 3rd largest company in the world by market cap,
but after the 10% decline.
Yep. Yeah, it's not 4 billion, not 4 trillion. These numbers are like, it's not 4 trillion anymore. It's 3.49, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
How will they get by? What will the kids have for Christmas?
You got to remember, this is a company whose primary business used to be added graphics cards for desktop PCs. This was what they did.
Amazing.
Right?
What a story.
So in 2020, this company's market cap was 323 billion.
Yeah.
Right. They had 16 billion in revenues. This past, assuming they hit their target,
and a great company, like doing well, kicking it, own the space.
Yep. No, nothing. Their software is terrible, but no one was complaining about the hardware. It's good stuff. This year, they hit at one point, like I said, 4 trillion in market cap, 333 billion in revenues by the end of this year, assuming they hit their targets, which they will. So 16 billion to 323 billion in revenues in 1 year. Sorry, that's not true. 16 billion to 121 billion. Sorry. That's revenues. And then market cap from 323 billion to 3.1 trillion. at the end of.
Yeah, what changed is the space that they're in.
Right.
Yikes.
Well, this is the other thing is the reason they were worth 300 billion was the crypto cycle.
Right.
Right. Like back when if you go back a few years and get pre-crypto mining, it's a much smaller company.
I
Right?
called this. I just want to take credit because I called this 3 years ago. I said NVIDIA is firing on all cylinders, and they're in many markets. They're in auto, self-driving autos. They're in crypto. It's not just gaming, and they're in AI.
Not just gaming is an afterthought. Gaming is a rounding error. If you look at their,
they should be giving
gaming
away
is
those
nothing.
gaming video cards. Like they
should just spin it off as a
free.
Those are the rejects, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. It's crazy. So
I do think this AI thing is somewhat of a bubble, right? All this infrastructure.
Somewhat of a bubble. This might be the biggest bubble of all time.
Well, it might. I mean, nobody wants to miss out. You saw that. Sutskever, who was kind of thrown out of OpenAI or left or whatever after trying to depose Sam Altman, has a new company now.
Yes.
What is he with a silly name? It's like I can't.
Safe AI, basically.
Yeah, safe super AI or something. Yeah. But he just raised $1 billion on this company. Has nothing. Has 10 employees, no product, no research. In fact, they say we're not going to have a product until we come up with a super intelligence.
Yeah. So that won't take long. We'll just use ChatGPT. It's fine.
But they're valued at $5 billion for nothing. So really, when you look at that, then NVIDIA doesn't make sense.
Right? Like if you're going to bet on somebody.
Yeah. So it's it's overhyped, but I also point to the hype cycles that built this nation, the railroad, the transcontinental railroad. All those original railroads went bankrupt, but we got the tracks, and that changed the country.
This is back to Paul's reference of the trough of disillusionment. Like then we start climbing up the path of enlightenment.
But it's important. Often the companies that start this go bankrupt. The bubble. The crash of the 1999 and 2000, all those companies are gone, but they put in all that fiber so you can buy kitty litter by mail now. Yeah. And so
I mean, you can look at like
it's a cycle. It's
when Steve Jobs started Next, it was kind of like a hype cycle in the beginning, and then it just never took off.
What often happens,
the foundation for everything they've done at Apple, right? I mean,
those companies don't make it, but the infrastructure they built is what powers the next revolution.
But therein lies the question, which is what has NVIDIA built?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Microsoft is better positioned than NVIDIA in this case, right? They talk about infrastructure or Amazon.
So the debate we've had was who's making the shovel here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you're talking. I mean, I reference Microsoft as a sort of infrastructure, but the real infrastructure in a way is the hardware that runs. And when
that's true. They're all buying NVIDIA chips.
You're gonna have a choice soon of different chips, right? Microsoft's going to make their own, and they're not working with.
Yeah, but Google's made their own. I mean, NVIDIA seems to have some secret sauce there. Well, that'll be the question.
We're about to find out.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Do they have lockout?
He has a cool leather jacket. I mean, they got that.
They do have that. They got that.
Other than that, from like an assets perspective, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see if all of these other chips can be produced in quantity and what their real yields are when they're racked and stacked and running en masse.
What's funny about them
nobody
is
has those numbers.
So the Microsoft, one of the Microsoft AI chip, I think it's the Maya chip, if I'm not mistaken. They did a little write up about it, and we live in a world where we think about consumer electronics devices. We're talking like 4 nanometer, 3 nanometer. This thing is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
No, I held it in my hand, and and you can't hold it in your hand. It takes 2 hands.
You can almost see the transitions. Like it's crazy how big it is. Like it's a different type of chip, so it's not it's just a chip,
server chip.
Yeah, that's just it's a a data center server chip. It's a big boy.
It's big.
So it's a different animal for sure. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
But we talked about this from the very beginning. We've been on the ride for 2024 to say, what can you make? On Donna Rocks and Run As, I'm pursuing the case study. Show me where you use this technology to make your company more money than it costs you to run it. And still waiting.
Let me ask you this question. So you have whatever companies and whatever business that are competing against each other, and all of them see that they have to, like, this is table stakes. They have to implement the same type of AI in all their products. Otherwise they will not be competitive. Right. So they all see that. So they all spend money doing that upgrade. However they do it, they hire people, they buy people, they buy technology, they lease technology, they build it in house, whatever they do. And at the end of the day, they've invested in some infrastructure that may benefit Microsoft, NVIDIA, whomever. So does that benefit the business or the industry? Is the net gain still there?
Yeah. The company
you know what I mean?
the company had to tip the checkbox, and if they spent the least amount to tip the checkbox, and they're probably in good shape.
Okay. And that goes back to my problem with Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is when everything is AI, then nothing is AI. And if Microsoft is charging for AI, but everyone else is giving it away, what's the business again?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be tricky.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
I mean, I also think that the stock market valuation is a lot. Really, just I don't want to miss this boat.
It's speculative.
It's more of that speculation.
Pure speculative, yeah.
But you don't want to be the guy who didn't buy into the AI revolution if HAL 9000 comes along.
Well,
I also don't want to be the guy who's retiring in the year that NVIDIA and Intel tank and take down the entire planet with them.
That's why you shouldn't be putting your retirement into this.
Yeah.
Right. But
this is speculative.
People are, right?
People are. You bet they are.
There are plenty of pension funds in there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be super careful with that.
And you'll know when they get out because
because that will contribute to that downward spiral. Exactly. No, exactly.
They'll get out before you got out.
Exactly. It might have just happened.
That's all we know.
Yesterday's blip.
That might be it.
Right. We're going to find out soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick Xbox. Not so big this week.
Let's lighten up with Xbox news because Xbox news is all good news.
Oh, how
well, here's the good news. I don't have any bad news, right?
Yeah.
So
that means the Blizzard apps are out.
Phil Spencer didn't step on a rake this week. No. There's nothing really super bad. If you're a Call of Duty fan, Black Ops 6 is available now in early access. It's on Xbox and it's on Game Pass, so you can do that. I have not looked at it even for 1 second, I promise. But it's there if you want it. I'm still trying to. I really don't play as much as I used to, but I've been slowly going through, Doom, and I'm going to get through.
What's the most violent game?
The most violent game.
I mean, this looks like it's not even close.
Which game? You mean Doom?
Just in general. No, I'm looking at Black Ops.
You're playing.
But these are humans. In Doom, you're just killing aliens.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're just aliens. Who cares? Like they're fake. Like they're just like that's. Who cares?
I would say like pretty violent because it's humans that you're going.
Kevin says Mortal Kombat, and I tend to agree, but it is comical. When the kill move is literally ripping the guy's.
You're saying you couldn't rip out like someone's spine. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe Postal. I don't. I'm not sure.
Postal was like notorious, right?
Postal was pretty gross.
First, really, the game that made your parents really angry.
Did last week? Did I discuss the whole right click problem? Did that come up last week?
Yes,
I think it did because it's coming up in the notes this week because my notes about the Game Pass thing goes to a different story, and that's exactly how that problem exhibits itself.
With track
click on something,
that's at least two so far in this.
Yeah, it's a huge. It's the problem is real. Either that, or you just accept that I have like serious dexterity problems, which is also a possibility. Microsoft did really. It's the beginning of September, so their new Game Pass titles. I'll just point out that none of them are for Activision Blizzard, and I'm not paying attention anymore because I refuse to even look.
I love that even you've abandoned hope. That makes me happy.
I give up. Here's what I want to do. I want to do with Game Pass what I do with Audible, which is pause it. So I don't. I'll come back when there are actually games from Activision Blizzard. Like we are closing in on 1 year. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
There are two games from Activision Blizzard in this thing. No. I've spent so much money on this subscription. I could have just bought those games outright and I would have saved money.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Well, that's not what was supposed to happen.
But October is generally when you do your big Christmas push.
Yeah.
So if they don't pull the trigger in October, then really this is nuts. But
I am not comfortable even guessing that could happen because seriously, this entire year has been.
It's really been crazy.
It's driving me crazy. It is driving me crazy. PlayStation 5 Pro, the design of the case leaked. Shocker! It looks like
that link is wrong. Also,
okay. Well, good. So
it's so fun clicking your links. I never know what I'm going to get.
Still a thing. It's likely it doesn't go to a porn site. It's just stuff. I don't know. Anyway, it looks exactly like the other PlayStation. So if you thought the kind of Geiger style design was fun, it's still like that. It's crazy.
Oh, is that really a tribute to Geiger, you think?
No, it's not. It looks like a tulip to me. It's like a flower or something.
It's not horrifying.
What it
No,
does,
it's-
what
no,
it
but
means
it's
is
horrifying.
nothing can stack on top of it because
Right. It's horrifying when you
Yeah,
put it in a
it's
stereo rack and
non-stackable.
it looks nothing like anything else. Like
no,
I
you're supposed to put it on a pintle in the center of the room because Sony.
right.
Yeah,
That's fair.
everybody wants to admire this lovely design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, there is
exactly
an
the
argument
same.
for don't allow the vents to be blocked, but
Yeah.
still.
Yep.
And we're still firmly in the camp that there's no way to make a higher performance machine because there's no game company that can actually utilize the machine as it stands right now.
Sure.
It's just too
We're running
expensive.
into also a storage problem, right? If you like, I'm going to make an 8K game, like an 8K version of Call of Duty. There's no SSD big enough to store those
No, that's
models.
it.
What are you talking
One
about? Like,
cutscene and your terabyte is gone.
it's over. Yep. Yeah, it's like back, when Windows 95 shipped and you had like a postage stamp video of a guy going down like a video, like a skiing, and it was like, oh, we're done. Yep. Like that's,
No, the escalation of game development costs, which while they were outsourcing to developing nations and things for a lot of that skill, has hit an impossible threshold. What's interesting when I talk to serious game designers right now, the friends of mine, it's about incorporating generative AI to reduce cost.
there you go.
Right? It's
by the way,
can
that's
I not script all of this dialogue? Can I literally have it generated on demand?
I like that. That feels like a good use of AI to me.
Yeah.
Actually. Right.
Because because if it's wrong, oh well. It's like not like games ever have bugs.
Well, also, you came up with a horrible story? Great. Well, you're just like every other video game. Who cares?
Yeah, but
That's fine.
The modeling behavior, the facial behaviors, like all the stuff that they've done the most expensive way possible. It needs to go. It needs to be simplified.
There's no version of an AI that can't create better side quests than what's in Halo Infinite. I will plant my flag on that. That's it.
What kind of side quests do you get in Halo?
Who cares? They're nonsense. It's just no, seriously, consider like the table of elements, like all the creatures you can have, all the weapons you can have, all the scenarios you can have.
Gotta
and
get them
jumble it
all.
into you roll the ball and you come out with the pills and you're like, yeah, it's just the same thing. It's like it's like a Mad Lib. Like it's just the same thing over and over again. Who cares?
Okay, I asked you what the most violent game was. What's the worst game?
Oh God, that's
Halo
a
Infinite.
long list too.
I told you if you want to cure a video game addiction, just play Halo Infinite. That will solve
Is that
the
what
problem.
happened?
That's
That's what happened to me. I did it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. No, solve it. It's not. No, you know what? It's horrible's the wrong word. Redfall might be the most horrible game. It's not horrible. It's just pointless. It's just like, oh, look, it's Halo, and it's the same thing over and over and over. Oh my God, please, anything.
Did you play Conquered yet?
No, and it's too late because, so I this is one of those schadenfreude things. If you're an Xbox fan and you were kind of hoping for Sony to step on a rake, this is it. They released a game called Conquered, which I understand is basically like a mobile game where they try to get you within app purchases and stuff.
Oh,
And
no wonder.
they sold in the tens of thousands of copies, not in the millions. So they've already killed it, which, by the way, is what Microsoft should have done with Redfall, but they didn't. Not really, but sort of.
That was 1 week.
Yep. It just came and went.
Chimney.
Yep. I guess that's what happens when you don't license a Marvel superhero or I don't know.
I don't know. I also think people are pretty burned out of the genre, right? Like you're just a little late to the game now. It's no.
It looks a little like Overwatch. Was it kind of
yeah.
Like it's
Melee
been
Because
done.
we need another one of those games, right?
Yeah. Too late.
Yeah.
But if it takes 10 years or 5 years or whatever to develop a game, it's easy to miss the trend.
That game formula was perfected in 2003. It was called Unreal Tournament. We're done.
Oh yeah, what
It was just
that was a game.
Yeah.
that was it.
All right, I'm sorry. All the fun is gone. The game section is over. I'm sorry.
You'll love my whiskey.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can't wait. That's coming up. Back of the book. All the good stuff's in the back of the book. It's just like that
I love your
edible
picks.
chocolate bar, huh?
Well, his picks are either like, "Yep, I know exactly what that is," or "What?" Are you just like? Is this a jumble of words that you put together? to see
This
if we're
one's
paying
just the
attention?
jumble of words.
This is a
it's
what?
like
It's 100% a what? Yes.
Yep. Like what? What is that?
All right.
I thought I knew something about this. I do
Stay
not.
I
tuned.
did too. It's some weird things that happen.
Stay tuned. Coming up, the jumble of word whiskey. But first, a word from our sponsor, the folks at Lookout. Look out, look out, look out. The world is coming. Today, every company is in the business of managing data, which means, of course, every company, you see it in the headlines, is at increased risk of data exposure and loss, cyber threats, breaches, leaks. Cyber criminals grow more sophisticated every day. Modern breaches happen sometimes in minutes, not months. I mean, you get up and boom, it's done. At a time when the majority of sensitive corporate data has moved to the cloud, traditional boundaries no longer exist, and the strategies for securing that data have fundamentally changed. But good news, enter Lookout. From the first phishing text to the final data grab, Lookout stops modern breaches as swiftly as they unfold, whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, even working remotely at the local coffee shop. Lookout gives you clear visibility into all your data at rest and in motion. You'll monitor, assess, and protect without sacrificing productivity for security. With a single unified cloud platform, Lookout simplifies and strengthens, reimagining security for the world that will be today. Visit lookout.com right now to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. Lookout.com. You need this. Check it out, lookout.com. Thank you, Lookout, for supporting Windows Weekly. Thank you all for supporting us by going to lookout.com. And now I take you to the back of the book, starting with Mr. Paul Thurrott's tip of the week.
Unmute myself first.
I like how delicately you did that. Me, I slam it. I slap it.
Well,
yeah, it was very beautiful.
I blue screen today. I'm taking.
Oh yeah, be gentle. Be gentle.
Feeling a little timid.
Don't blame you.
Yeah, a little gun shy there. So I didn't put this in the notes. I only noticed it 10 seconds before we started the show. But someone is making a mini PC, like a NUC style PC, that has a Copilot Plus button on it,
Nice.
like they have on laptops. That's not my tip. Don't buy that. That's stupid. But I just reviewed that Lenovo IdeaPad, which is the AMD Radeon previous gen now, 780 graphics, etc. And I am kind of blown away by it. It is the cheapest, most inexpensive thing in the world. The cheap bit means you could look at any component, the screen, the ports, the material they make the case out of, anything, pick it, anything you want. And you can see where they shaved, money, the cost off of the machine, right?
It also symmetrically inexpensive.
Yeah.
Speaking of shaving costs, I like how you shot this entire photo layout on your lawn furniture.
No, this is at a winery.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see the people drinking heavily in the background.
That's right.
Was this a Lenovo event?
No, we went up to the Finger Lakes last weekend.
Oh, nice.
I always take at least one. I do.
Honey,
like one
I'm going to
photo.
bring a laptop. We're going to do a photo shoot. You don't mind, do you?
Yeah. No, this is the third year in a row. Everyone gets it. It's fine.
They know what's going to happen.
No,
Yeah,
there's Paul again. No, better give
got his
Weirdo with the
iPhone.
laptop. Didn't I see you doing this last year?
Actually, I really like it because it's geometric. It's kind of it's really cool, to be honest.
You got a look going here, friend.
Yeah.
You absolutely do.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. It's cheap, and I mean that in the literal sense of the word.
Like
it's
what?
also inexpensive. It's cheap.
Yeah.
But like $600.
Oh wow.
But here's the thing. Like honestly, the thing I would compare this to is probably like the Xbox Series S, except that it's a PC that is it's a good piece, still a good PC. It's a 14-inch screen. Like this thing plays games really, really, really well.
Totally.
So there's probably a version coming soon with the Zen 5 stuff, and then we can have a different conversation. But I played a bunch of games on this thing, and it just kind of blows I'm considering getting one just for myself. Like it's nice, like it's really nice.
It's more in a way a statement of how PC technology has kind of migrated down, and now a consumer grade laptop has a lot of horsepower.
There's a line we've crossed where gaming PCs and regular PCs used to be two different kinds of things.
Yeah.
And a gaming PC would be this thing that got 1 hour of battery life if you were stupid enough to unplug it.
Yeah.
And I
you had enough
think
time to
they've
run to another outlet, but that was it.
Yeah.
Battery
And I
life
think
measured in seconds.
I think they've kind of met in the middle a little bit. So this is integrated graphics. This is not a.
Wait a minute, what's this picture? did a picture sneak into the roll here? And
that's the webcam.
That's Agent Smith.
Oh, that's the webcam. Okay.
Yeah.
Good looking though. Good
look,
looking.
I tried to fit in every minute I could on this trip for work.
Why enjoy a visit to a winery when you can shoot pictures?
When it can be a business expense.
Yeah. Oh, never mind.
Well, yeah. Look, you're in the thing for 3 hours. What am I going to do? Listen to my brother-in-law's radio station? I got stuff to do. So, anyway, I look, like I said, cheap, yes, but awesome. Like, yeah, actually, yes. Like, it's kind of awesome. It's so. This is what I've been using to play games on lately. It's really
great.
Good. Yeah, it's neat. And then so I love our community. We are really focused on all the wrong things, and so predictably, it's beautiful. People are outraged by Outlook, the new Outlook. I guess I get it. I don't actually understand people liking Outlook in any way, shape, or form, but they're out there, No,
there's the hate and there's the hate you don't know.
Yeah. It's like people who watch like a TV show they hate, and they can't stop talking about it. And it's like, what are you doing with your time here? But I don't know. It's a thing. But here's another one for all you guys. The remote desktop app that we've had since probably XP. Actually, maybe even 2000. I don't know, somewhere in that time frame. Microsoft, and there were many versions of it. Right? There's the version that's in Windows. They ship versions for Mac and mobile platforms. There's a web version. There's the version for Windows DevBox. There's the version for Windows 365. They're all merging into a single app, which Microsoft, in its infinite branding wisdom, is going to call the Windows app because hilarious.
That's not confusing at all.
Yep, and you can just write the headlines yourself. Now you're going to be able to run Windows on your iPhone. So
the Windows app.
Yep. So every version of this app will be GA within the next 30 days, except for the one on Android. Sometime, it might be October, that will come out in preview. That one's actually not available yet, oddly. But the others are all hitting GA soon. And enjoy the splashy WinUI graphics. And just remember that I typically cover consumer tech, and I don't want to hear about it. So, I'm just throwing it out there. Richard is more the guy, I think, for this. So,
well, we've been told not to use RDP for a long, long time.
Yep.
So it makes sense that they would have to push it down to consumers.
Yeah.
Oh, this is RDP. Oh, how interesting.
That's really
this is the new one. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which just means that all those administrators have done all that work blocking all those ports.
I know.
Now they're going to have their users complain because they can't remotely log into their machine at home with Windows app. Why are you blocking Windows app? Because it's RDP.
Wow.
Yep. Hilarious. It's, they did the spit shine on OneNote or Notepad. It's a modern app now, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's got tabs.
Yeah, it's fun. It's got curved corners. It's new.
It's all sexy.
Yep.
The Windows app.
All right, time for Mr. Richard Campbell. And first, let's start with Run As Radio. What's coming up?
I've realized now that when I get desperate about this whole AI situation, it's making me crazy. I go talk to real professionals. And Allison Cassette is one of them because she's actually a data scientist. She did the real work before it was fun and cool. And so I'm like, is it just me? Like, what are we doing here? Are we crazy? And she's like, no, we're definitely going through a crazy time. And so the conversation was really like, how are we going to evolve out of this? And the point, and Allison hit square on. It's like, get back to testing, because that's what we used to do with every machine model extensively before we deployed anything. And they're just bypassing those steps right now, and it's going to burn them inevitably. And so if you want to be responsible as a sysadmin, and remember, that's who I'm talking to on Run As, is like, you're bringing this stuff into your organization and you want to head down this path, you've got to get serious about how you validate. And interestingly, around the time I was recording this show, I was was having conversations with some startups that were implementing generative AI technologies and saying, we can't deploy this to our customers because it's too inconsistent. We're building out our testing infrastructure to make sure we get it right. So I do feel I've gotten a lot of reinforcement on this, but what I appreciate about this show is some really good conversation about taking this technology seriously, where we've really come from, and that there were procedures in place. It's just that a lot of, ChatGPT fanboys have come on and said, it's fine, everything's fine, just use it, and not do the responsible thing and really understand how it's working for your company.
Very good. All right. Paul said it was going to be weird. Let's see if he...
You just saw
It's
it by the
either
name.
like familiar or huh?
What?
It's either a product you've already heard of or you've never heard of it. So, and this is a byproduct of me going and visiting friends in the Netherlands. And every time I've gotten a weird whiskey or two from them. But this is taking it up another notch because I've had to dig deeper into this. Again, I thought I knew my way around whiskey before I started hanging out with you guys all the time. And now it's really, my mind keeps changing.
I'm not accepting the blame for this. I'm sorry.
Deeper and deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole.
Well, first thing you're going to have to tell me is what this means.
This means, are you 18?
Bevestig geliefd,
Click on the black box. Even when you're on the English site, it still pops up the Dutch "Are you 18?"
I know, I love it.
thing. So this is clay whiskey, and this is one of these modern micro distilleries, founded only in 2015 in Rotterdam, which is one of the largest city in the Netherlands. It's where the big ports are, right? And the old joke in the Netherlands is that Rotterdam makes the money and The Hague spends it on Amsterdam. Like those are the three big cities. The founders, Paul den Dulk and Maria Neves, they named it after the road that they built the facility on, called Clay Road, which was first marked on a map in 1611. So,
Wow.
Before all the colonies were doing much anything, there was Clay Road. And
When roads
Clay
really were
whiskey.
made of clay.
Yeah, true enough. Paul's education in distilling actually comes from Genever. Genever is a Dutch alcohol, regional. Well, it's not really Dutch. It's regional to the northwestern Europe. So that's Netherlands, Belgium, parts of western parts of Germany, northern parts of France. Going back to the 1200s. It's a very old school drink, but it is a juniper spirit. So before gin, there was Genever. And by the way, if you ever fly in the business or first class seats of KLM, they'll give you a little house made of ceramic.
I have a whole
house.
row of them on my
Right.
kitchen couch.
And they are filled
sill.
with Genever.
Really?
Yes, that's what that liquid
I was
is.
wondering
when you
what
shake
was
it
in
around.
there. I knew it
That's
was
what's in
something.
there. I have lost a couple of weekends to this stuff. I do not recommend it. It is
What
bad.
does it taste like?
It's basically gin. It's
Gin.
It's
Okay.
a simplified gin. It's made with alembic stills, the old school still. And in fact, the school where Paul was educated, he purchased one of their alembic stills, and that's what clay whiskey uses. They make a gin as well as a set of whiskey. And when I say microdistillery, I'm not kidding. This place makes 10,000 liters of alcohol a year. So somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 bottles total, right? And in the 2015 is not an accident, because in 2014 is when the Netherlands passed laws for microdistilleries where they reduced the taxation rate of the alcohol when you're under a certain level of production. As you get bigger, then you pay more tax per liter. This is very similar to what I described when we were talking about the Laird of Fintry out of the Okanagan, where British Columbia has the same microdistilling rules. So what's made this expansion of distilling in small scale grow so much has been that we found ways to allow these companies to stay small, to be profitable, and not have to grow to big factories with 24-hour-a-day shifts to be able to make enough margin to function. It looks like clay whiskey is succeeding on 10,000 liters per year. And so they have a lot of some advantages in the size of things. You're talking about a small operation. Realistically, they're selling this bottle of whiskey for 70 euros, maybe $80. And they're probably keeping a fair portion of that because they do a minimal amount of marketing. We'll get further into that. So you're still talking about a total budget of $250,000, maybe $500,000 a year, all up, less cost of goods. Like this can't be more than 3 or 4 people running the whole place. Like that's what it takes to make this work. This particular edition, I had a chance to taste at my friend's place where I was before we went to Copenhagen. Visiting with his little baby. And so he pulled this out and I took a taste and I took some pictures and did some research. The name Palo Cortado is actually a type of sherry. And I can't believe we're talking about sherry again, to the point where it's like, it's time for me to finish reading all the specs on sherry because I'm learning more and more about it. Because each time we go down this path, you got to understand what's the heck's a Palo Cortado versus the other kinds of sherry. So this particular edition of their whiskey, which they don't have any more of, so you have to go find a bottle at a specialty shop, spent 3 years in bourbon casks, super normal for whiskey, right? Made in Europe, an expensive way to get your 3 years in. Barrels don't cost too much. And then a year and a half in a Palo Cortado octave cask. An octave cask is a really small cask. It's 64 liters or about 17 gallons, as opposed to a normal American bourbon cask, which is 200 liters or 53 gallons. Although if you're in Scotland, they always remake them as hogsheads, right? They get 5 bourbon casks together and they make 4 hogsheads, which are 250 liters or about 66 gallons each. I presume that is what Clay Whiskey did with this, is that they remade them into the 250s. They did their 3 years. And considering how small a batch are, maybe only 1 or 2 barrels, right? Like this is very small batch production. And after the 3 years, they do this year and a half in an octave cask, these tiny little casks. And a year and a half in a cask that small is a long time, because the contact level for the spirit is really high when you're down to a cask that small. So the flavor on it is astonishing for something that's only 4.5 years old, and you never see appellations on any of these micro distilleries. It's got big, rich flavors. Now, I'd be remiss if I don't explain what a Palo Cortado is, because it's a very unusual type of sherry. And I mentioned sherry briefly when we were talking about last week's the Moscard Muscatel, which is another sherry finished small distillery whiskey. The most common type of sherry, like 90% of it, is called Fino. It's made from the Palomino grape. It's fortified wine, so they add about 15%. They raise the alcohol using grape spirit up to about 15%, and they put it in barrels. And remember, they stack the barrels, so the oldest ones are at the bottom and the newer ones are higher up, and you take about a third out year over year, typically 3 years old. Well, I did talk about this at the time because it seems crazy, and I want to dig further into it. Maybe I'll have to just do a whole sherry piece, because in the phenos specifically, because they only fortify up to 15%, as the sherry sits in the barrel, it grows a layer of yeast they call flor. And this layer of yeast actually stops the sherry from oxidizing. So it keeps its color, kind of protects it when it ages. And then in the second year, they move a third of it down. They move a third of it down a barrel, and they move a third of it down a barrel until finally, after 3 years, you're taking a third of it out to put into bottles. But a small percentage time that doesn't happen. Well, what really happens is it really depends on the flavors, and this is where even the name Palo Cortado comes from. So when they initially make up the sherry, they taste it as they're putting it in the barrel, and the overseers, these barrelmen, mark it. If they're happy with the flavor, if it's coming out really nice, they'll put a single stroke on it, which that means it's going to be a Fino, which is this kind where they're going to leave a certain amount of room. It's going to grow the floor. It's going to last us 3 years, and they're going to serve it. If it's stronger flavored, they'll make it into an Oloroso sherry. So now it's marked differently. There's a stroke and a dot, and they actually raise the alcohol level to put up to 17 or 18%, because they don't want it to spoil. At 14% or 15%, it can actually go off. And so if they raise the alcohol level higher, it kills all the bacteria, and so it's safe. Then they have a whole procedure for, if they're not sure how the barrel's going, they'll actually put 2 marks on it, which means go back and check it again. And then if they get bad, right? If they're not good ones, they'll put 3 marks on it. That means this goes to the vinegar makers, or it'll be distilled into a kind of brandy. Like, there's other outcomes for it. But a Palo Cortado means a crossed stroke. So what's actually happened is that some point in that first year or so, typically, the floor dies and disappears. And now it's oxidizing. And so they'll cross the single stroke because they thought it was going to be a Fino. And they raise the alcohol level up to 17% protected. And it makes this kind of mixture of the gentle aging of the Fino with the Oloroso aging as it finishes. And that's Palo Cortado.
Wow.
I've never had a Palo Cortado. Now I want one, now that I've seen how crazy this is. But this is the particular kinds of barrels that the Clay Whiskey folks laid their hands on to make this edition only. And the reason you can't see it on the retails is that they sold it almost entirely through whiskey clubs.
Oh,
I'm seeing this more and more, and I'm realizing it's a whole other business model. You've got your discount on your taxes for being a micro distillery. You're trying to do direct sales on the web, which is its own challenge, but you got to move enough units, right? And if you're a big distillery, of course, you're doing big scale marketing and you're doing all your branding exercises and so forth. But more and more, I saw this with Ballandalloch, and I've seen it with the Mossguard as well. They're working closely with these whiskey clubs across Europe and essentially making a special editions for the club only. And some of these whiskey clubs, these little shops, are selling 100 bottles. Like they have a serious loyal membership. And when they like a bottle, they're going to be able to give it to a whole bunch of their members. And if you're only making 15,000 bottles a year, and you can sell 100 to one club, like you don't need that many clubs before. That's your whole business. And it to me, it's fascinating because now the retail relationship is very personal. You're not necessarily driving on the brand so much as you're one of the brands. You now have a relationship with maybe 100 people, right? The ones that run these powerful clubs, these successful clubs, that then they have 100 or so key customers, and boom, you're at 10,000 bottles. Like you're good. You've got a working business at that scale. And all of this is by way to say that my friend is realizing that his favorite whiskey club, the guy who's running is in his 70s, is ready to retire, and he may take it over, and I might be investing in a whiskey club.
Hey, good idea.
No, it's not a good idea. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. It's just that,
I like it. I like it for you. I like it for you.
But I love this change in business model, right? This opportunity to have these small units, that this is a successful business. And then they have this supply chain that's very personal. That's very individualized, and it only makes sense at the small scale. And these are not businesses trying to grow to become owned by Diageo. These are businesses that are happy making the product they're making, experiment in the ways they want. And when they make a batch they really like, they can tell because their clubs buy it all. And that's it. They don't do any more marketing than that.
Do you think small scale in general is better than big scale production?
When you get bigger, it's easier to get lost.
Right.
Right. My concern with a place like Clay Whiskey is they only have to make a couple of bad batches that the clubs don't want to buy.
Then they're in trouble. Yeah.
Right. And you can already see if you poke through that website, they got about 4 or 5 editions of whiskey running right now. So, and some of those are going to be more popular than others, but that helps them target in on what their real customers want. And you're only talking about 10,000 customers. Right? Like it's not an outrageous number, and they're not trying to directly control them. They're connecting with different clubs. Now you get a couple of 100 clubs going, and you can mix and match, and they're going to have different flavor profiles. You notice that they have a peated, so they're playing with some other flavors in there as well. This particular edition ran about 70 euros when it was available, and there's still a few bottles out there. I found a couple, so $80 US. It's cask strength, so 51% is really what it came out after those years. It was hand numbered. I have the photograph of it. It was bottle 97 of the batch. And it was only a 500 centiliter bottle or a 50 centiliter bottle or 500 milliliter bottle. So as opposed to a normal 750. So that's what.
Yeah, they look kind of cute. Yeah.
18 ounces. Like it's a little small.
So I think you have a marvelous opportunity if you did a whiskey club, Richard.
Yep.
You would sell, just you run this show alone.
Yeah, the challenge here is shipping. Where can you actually deliver to? So one of the upsides to being in the EU is the rules are pretty straightforward for moving whiskey around in that area.
Yeah. But the rules of the US are convoluted.
Yeah, every state's different.
Yeah, the phrase you're thinking is interstate commerce. Mm-hmm. And it's the same problem in Canada with interprovincial commerce. Mm-hmm. It is difficult. And that would end up being your whole business is what does it take to deliver?
I think you have to go to everybody's house.
Well, there's that, or it's just the club. So do you figure out where your clubs are and where it works? So this may only work in Northwestern Europe. I hope that's not true, but it is an interesting part about, spirits have been tightly controlled for a very long time. And it's very tough to ship between entities for spirits because they all have their own rules. Like you cannot sell a 60% ABV alcohol in Norway, full stop. Like you can't. It's a law against the law. They set a law ages ago. It's kind of a silly law today, but it's still there. And so when when we went and got a bunch of Avalor Abunda, which can run anywhere between 57 and 62. They literally have to sort the cases out to stay under 60 to sell in Norway.
Wow.
Right? It's that kind of thing. So yeah, rule to rule, these things are hard.
Well, it takes the fun out of getting drunk.
You know,
It's the whiskey version of binning.
Yeah. It's binned. It's binned.
We're going to add some water to it so we can sell it in Norway.
But yeah, I'm getting pulled into the business models now and how these micro distilleries are starting to work.
That's too bad because I mean, you have this perfect bully pulpit for a whiskey club.
If
you
I
could call it Richard Campbell's Whiskey Club.
Yeah,
and I think everybody listening would join it.
It's just a question of how to sell it, but provide it to people. But if
Richard,
is that why
in the pocket of big whiskey?
But now I understand why the whiskey advent calendar you very kindly gave us last year, it can't really be branded because they have to figure out how to get around shipping it to all these different states. And,
yes, well, and literally it was only available in certain places because folks have only gone so far. And I hate you want to learn to hate your business in a big hurry. What if the secret sauce of your business is, shipping rolls? Like that is sad.
That's a logistics business, not a whiskey business.
I think that's not what people want to do. But that's where I think these clubs may be a proxy for a bunch of those problems. So
you're in a good business for what you do, which is explain how all this stuff works and talk about it. And we're so glad you're here. Richard Campbell, runasradio.com. That's where his podcasts are, both .NET Rocks and Run as Radio, and he is home for the nonce, but his
Vegas next week.
His tribulations and trials begin next week. Thank you, Richard.
We'll be back.
Really appreciate it. Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. He's in Epha, and I'm sure you'll have more Epha coverage at Thurrott.com.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to come back next week, or what's?
Yeah, I'll be home next few weeks at least, and then eventually I go to Dallas and then Mexico.
Dallas, okay. So I will not be here in the next couple of weeks.
That's right.
I'm going for a little trip, but I will be back in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Micah Sargent will be taking over, and he does a great job with the show.
That guy.
He won't be doing all this kind of weird stuff that I do, I got to tell you.
Let's see how he does.
Paul has also got at his books are at leanpub.com if you want to buy the Field Guide to Windows 11 and, of course, Windows Everywhere, which is a great book. And I see you're doing some .NET stuff on Thurrott.com for the premium subscribers. It's worth subscribing. Besides,
I spent my entire time on the plane right here writing that, the next 2 articles in that series. So,
ladies and gentlemen, we do Windows Weekly on Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. I'm glad we're here. The asteroid hit the Earth, but we survived. I was wondering if we'd have a show today, but we did.
What's that cloud on the horizon, though? That's okay, right? Nothing to worry about.
There's always a cloud on the horizon and a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to hope neither of them will get you. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show. Oh, we do stream. When we stream, I should mention, because thanks to the club, we are able to stream in so many places. The Discord, yes, but with the help of Restream.io, we're also on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.com. So you can watch us live. There are 743 people watching on those various platforms. We thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at twit.tv/WW. When you're there, you'll see a link to the YouTube page. I always recommend that if you want to share little clips. It helps us. But if you see something and you go, what's his name would be very interested in this, just clip it out at YouTube, send it to him. It's an easy way for anybody to watch. Best way, maybe not the easiest, best way for you to watch is subscribe. Find a podcast client you like, subscribe, and you'll get it automatically as soon as it's available. After Kevin King does his magic. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. See you in 3. Thanks to the club members. If you're not a member, ad-free versions of the show available at twit.tv/clubtwit. I hope to come back and see thousands of new members. And I also hope to see a few of you at Bryant Park on Saturday, 3 p.m.
That's so fun.
For a photo shoot at 5 p.m. And
I would have showed up for that if I was home. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, maybe Mary Jo will come over. I don't know. Dick DiBartolo is going to stop by. It'll be fun. I also see that there's rain in the forecast. So bring your umbrella. because
Park has trees. You'll be fine.
we're going to stand under a tree, and then when the lightning hits, we're going to move to another
That's where
tree.
you want to be, under a tree.
Under a tree, always. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Richard. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.